flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everyone back into in-person meetings. It's very exciting. I'm with you, Brooke. Feels good to be just to see everybody's faces. So we'll call the select board meeting, July 14th select board meeting to order. In honor of Dawn reading this long script for almost 2 years, I'm also going to read it. Soon we won't have to do the whole thing, but
so we'll call the select board meeting, July 14th select board meeting to order.
Oh.
In honor of Dawn.
Does somebody have their Zoom on their computer in here in this room?
Soon we won't have to.
I wonder where that's coming from.
But so we'll call the select board meeting, July 14th meeting.
Does somebody have their Zoom on their computer? We knew this would happen. Yeah, this is our first time doing the hybrid model. We knew this would happen. Okay, so I'm gonna go through this fun script, hopefully one of the last times. So we are using a Zoom webinar for meetings, which allows for the public to participate for this meeting as an attendee. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique to the meeting. The registration link can be found in the descriptions of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed for the meeting. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order they were raised. Although now we will be adding in-person people who are standing along with attendees raising their hands. All questions should be directed through the chair. As a preliminary matter, this is, let's see, I'm sorry. Let's see, members, nope, don't need to do that anymore. Okay. The open meeting of the select board is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment as previously noted. For the meeting, the select board is convening by video conference via Zoom webinar as posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. For Zoom meetings, please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Not all, but some now. Accordingly, see, we have to edit this a little bit. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Let's see, we are now, I think we're good. Yep, I think that's good. How's that, Don? That was almost everything. Okay, so we call to order. There's no new items, no changes to the agenda. We can go over to announcements, Libby.
Thank you. This meeting is being video and audio recorded, as you mentioned. We have a number of 2021 board, committee, and commission vacancies still open, including Agricultural Commission, Council for Human Services, Cultural Council, Nantucket Historical Commission alternate, Planning Board alternate, Roads and Right-of-Way Committee, Tree Advisory Committee, Zoning Board of Appeals, and Zoning Board of Appeals alternate. There are some deadlines for application submittals coming up. One of them is coming up this Friday, the 16th at noon. And hopefully we will have some applicants, and those names would be read out loud at the board's meetings next week and August 4th, and appointments made potentially on August 18th.
Sorry, we've had really good responses for the vacancies right now, with the exception of the Agricultural Commission. So if there's any agricultural people out there, we really need your applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. We have some visitors from the Cyrus Pierce Middle School 8th grade civics students class or civics class. And I think that Becky Hickman is going to give a little overview of an affordable housing project that they worked on with a video that we are going to see a clip from. Becky, do you want to give us a little overview? Yes, I think come to the mic down here, please.
that can be up while I talk. Is this on? Hi. Thank you so much for having us. I had to provide cheat notes because I get very nervous. I'm Becky Hickman. This year, I filled in to help with COVID. So I was teaching 8th grade civics, and it was an interesting year, to say the least. We had a lot to teach in civics, but I do have to give out a huge shout out to Mr. Farrell, Dan Farrell, who couldn't be here tonight. He's off island. Otherwise, he would have been. He was my mentor all year. He was fabulous. I learned so much from these kids. This is Aaron Pearl and Jeremy Cohen. And their project is the video that you will see. But let me just take a quick peek at my notes. So part of the state's curriculum that went into effect 2 years ago was a civics project. And this year, it took us 6 to 8 weeks to complete this from start to finish. It is very well laid out by the state, but it gives our kids a chance to identify local community issues that directly affect them. And we went through, lots of stages with this. The first step was to have the kids just brainstorm ideas. What did they think was an issue that our community faces? And then we whittled that list down. Out of the 6 classes that we both taught, Mr. Farrell and I together, 5 of them were housing. Some of the other topics that they did, one of the classes opted to do the drug problem that we have on Nantucket. They were focusing on the ferries and the planes, and we had Keith Mansfield come in and speak and kind of opened their eyes a little bit as to why we can't just have drug dogs going through the boats. And we had another group, they wanted to focus on alternatives to the geotubes in Sconset. And they had a great letter that they sent to various people, and they were invited to go out and meet with the Sconset Bluff people to talk about it and look at it. And then and then 2 or 3 of the groups did littering. They wanted to really pursue the cover your load, and they did a lot of social media and posters of surrounding that. So the process went from a big issue to a focus issue to the root cause to goals. And then basically the end result was coming up with a realistic action plan that they could get involved and really put out there and have their voices heard. We had guest speakers. Actually, I noticed that Tucker Holland is on the Zoom. He came in. Brooke Moore was huge. She came a number of times and spoke with our students. But the hope is for our students to become engaged in the community and really for you to hear their voices. One of the girls who also could not be here, she had to go to Bulgaria for the summer, but she was the other half of their group, and they wrote a letter that Julian Sears' office through Tucker sent. And when I'll get very emotional. She came in to see that Julian Sear wanted to use their letter, and the 2 of us just cried. And she was ecstatic that someone listened to them. And that's what this is all about. Their video, unfortunately, Jeremy ran into some technical difficulties. When they were filming the first round, I actually had to leave because one of the teachers that they were interviewing got very emotional. And I got very emotional and just had to walk away. Unfortunately, that clip was lost, and that is not part of the end result. But regardless, I cannot say how proud I am of these kids enough. So I will turn it over to them. Hello. I don't know if you have any questions for them, or if you just want to show the video.
That's awesome.
And we do have to give a shout out to Emily Clarkson for her drone footage. She was huge.
1.6% of Nantucket is preserved. rental units, and over half the units, 2,500 units, are reserved for households with incomes below the 80% of area median. What is your name? My name is Lauren Vico. When did you arrive on Nantucket? I moved here in 2018 and my husband moved here in 2015. When did you start settling in? How long have you been doing it for? When my husband first moved here in 2015, he stayed on a couch for $700 a month, and there was another man sitting on a couch next to him. Then he moved to his brother's apartment to sleep on a different couch for slightly less money. And when I moved here with my kids in 2018, we lived in an above ground apartment that was really big, but it was also really dangerous. There's wires coming up out of the ground and out of the walls that were exposed. And we stayed there about 2 months until we moved into a new home owned by my husband's employer. It's an apartment that we've been there for 2 years. So I don't know if you really just answered this question, but how has it affected you and your families? Well, for me, it just doesn't feel like calm to go home at the end of the day. You can't see any sky from any window in our apartment. Since I've lived in that basement apartment, I've been diagnosed with depression and OCD. I think the pandemic obviously didn't make it any better, but it's just hard to be underground all the time. And for my children, it's just they don't go outside to play as much because we're like underground and I can't see them from the window, so I have to go up and meet them all the time. So it's fine, and we're in a stable home, but we're just not thriving yet.
Then the end of the video features. And this was another project that another class had done.
Oh, okay, great.
I don't know that we are. I think that was just the flyer. I just want to say thank you so much for coming here on our first night. So there's technical difficulties on our end, but we can tell the video is fabulous. Make sure that we get the link to see it so we can watch it ourselves. I guess, because you were assigned this, I'd love to hear from each of you what you learned about affordable housing and the crisis in our community. And my name's Melissa, by the way.
Oh, well, I learned how much it affects families and the community on Nantucket for people who can't afford it, and how big of a problem it really is. You don't see it much here when you're driving around, but there are a lot of people here struggling to find housing and jobs to support the housing that they're trying to afford here.
I learned that a lot of people have to have 2 jobs, and that a lot of people have to end up moving off island and they don't get to stay here. And because of this problem, we lose a lot of our workers. So we don't have a lot of people to help with the amount of people that come here during the summer. So a lot of our housing actually goes to them because they have the money to pay for it. So we lose a lot of our housing, and then a lot of our people have to leave.
Thank you. Good question, Melissa. Christy, do you have anything?
I was just going to thank you for coming, especially our first meeting. And I really enjoyed the full video. It's 11 minutes and it's on our agenda, the link for anybody who wants to watch the full video. It was really informative and it was really great to see it from a student's perspective. So thank you.
Dawn?
Incredibly well done, and it's so nice to see so many more people and people from a younger generation starting to recognize that this is one of our biggest issues, and it's why we've made it such a top priority in our strategic plan. And I haven't seen the full video yet, but I'm really excited to watch it.
I just want to remind anybody under 18, you do not have to be registered to vote to come here and speak to your select board and to your elected officials. So you could be 14, 15, 13 years old and come here and sway things one way or the other. So this is really important to hear from you and see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic. The next announcement is that effective next Wednesday, July 21st, the select board meetings will start at 5:30. And that's it for announcements.
Thank you, Libby. So we're gonna go to public comment here in a second. I'll get some people who have their hands up, but we'll go to our COVID-19 weekly update soon. Just so the board knows, we're gonna go to a monthly update. So the next one will be, I believe, August 5th or 4th, whatever that Wednesday is, the 4th. Thank you, Erica. That with an asterisk mark of if we need to bring anything up each week, we will. Any public comments on COVID-19 weekly update?
Somebody remotely has their hand raised.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's COVID related though.
If it's COVID related, we can let the attendee in.
Okay. I have let Mary Laura. Mary, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
And is this COVID related?
It is not.
You want to hold your question until we get to public comment for non-COVID related items?
Yes.
Okay, I'll bring you in then.
Thank you, Erica. Report from our health director. Berto, I remember right before we stopped being in person, you stood right there and talked about COVID and washing your hands and big bubbles and
it was a different world.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that meeting was very interesting.
Mhm.
So from where we came from where we were back then to now being back in person is a big step. It's good to see everyone again in person. It isn't glad to see everyone else here. So thank you. And everyone on Zoom as well. One of the most important things that I want to convey is that we've got a lot of questions about Delta variant. And I wanted to definitely address that ahead at the very beginning. So we are monitoring the Delta variant as it stands. In the state of Massachusetts, it still is only about 10% of the cases that they are doing seroprevalence studies on, which is lower than most of the other states in the union. In some areas where we are seeing current COVID outbreaks, it is the predominant variant that is out there. So sorry, I know it's bad. I don't know where to put my arms anymore. Public speaking isn't the same as it used to be. So let me put my notes here. So where we were where we are now is in the state of Massachusetts is about 10%. The alpha variant, which is the UK B117 variant, is approximately 30% of all our cases in the state of Massachusetts. And I'm pulling them up from my head, so give me a moment. The beta variant, I believe is what it's called, which was the South African variant, is still only approximately 10 to 20% of all the cases in the state of Massachusetts. The P1 variant, which is the Brazilian variant, which I think they're calling it the Gamma variant now, is now considered only about 15% of all cases. The rest are still wild type, which was not variant. We do still have some of that original outbreak that is still proliferating in the state of Massachusetts. Even though as we all remember, we were ground zero in late March to through the end of April. The state of Massachusetts was that. So we're still seeing that wild type virus here, which means that outbreak that started in March has not ended. So it's really important to understand that as well. Where we are with the variants in Nantucket, we haven't had any confirmed cases yet. Doesn't mean it's not here. The BioBot sewer report that we've been seeing, thank you to David that he's continuing doing, we are still seeing what's considered what they're calling less than one case a day. And that has been shown, that's what we're seeing in the symptomatic testing as well, only about one case every other day or so, which is still very great. Well, with the recent outbreak in Provincetown that we were seeing, and there is a state mobile testing unit that was deployed there. Thanks to a question from Melissa, we were able to look into that mobile testing unit from the state. We received the response today. So the good news is that if we do see a proliferation of cases here that we cannot handle with our own testing facilities, that the hospital has said they are willing to ramp up if we have to, they are also willing to send a mobile testing unit here. So it's done as a case-by-case basis. So we would need to explicitly ask for it. Is the most important part. And then vaccinations. Oh, with the Delta variant, with all the variants, the Pfizer vaccine, the J&J vaccine, and the Moderna vaccine, which are the three vaccines that are approved by the FDA. There are something like 9 vaccines out there in the world. The 3 that are done on the FDA, what we have found is that even though there are breakthrough cases with the Delta variant and the Alpha and Beta and Gamma and Iota variants, what we are seeing is that even though some people are still getting sick, even if they have had the vaccination, so far the death rate is still 0. It is still preventing death in 100% of the cases. It doesn't prevent hospitalization. There are some cases that are ending up, some of the more immunocompromised people. If you are immunocompromised, continue to wear a mask. We know that it's political and whole 9 yards, but the mask is your biggest barrier. I remember when we first sat, actually one of the things you were talking about when I was here back in March of 2020, when we were first talking about masks, like where do we stand with masks? And that data that was out there was that only if you're sick should you be wearing a mask. That was what the original guidance was. And as we learned more about asymptomatic cases and how they're still able to spread it via droplets, that's when the guidance eventually moved over to everyone should wear a mask. So, and that's kind of where we are now. You know, if you're in an immunocompromised state, or if you have an increased risk of infection, we do recommend that you wear a mask, especially if you're in a crowded area. For those of us who do wear masks, please, for those of us that are wearing masks and those of us who don't, if you do not wear a mask and you have opinions on masks, we are requesting that you keep those opinions as non-aggressive as possible. We are still getting comments here of people getting yelled at in the streets about, why are you wearing a mask? It's none of your business. They choose to wear a mask. I choose to wear a hat. Jason, you choose to wear a tie. It's none of their business. So that's kind of the most important part here of that section. And then with vaccines, we have the town has vaccinated over 694 people, totally vaccinated. We are expecting another 60 people tomorrow for second doses. So we should be crossing that 700 person threshold. The demand has not subsided, as Brooke could probably tell you, because she has been tremendous in the volunteer line as well. The demand is still there. So we're expected to probably cross that 1,000 person threshold in the next 4 to 5 weeks. And as the town vaccinating. In our conversations with Nantucket Cottage Hospital, they are still working a process as to whether or not they're going to be able to provide the doses in their primary care units. If they do, it will be either the Johnson & Johnson or the Pfizer, because that is what their supply chain has. And then last but not least, most of us aren't wearing masks anymore, and most of us are not vaccinated against the flu. So we are going to be doing flu clinics after a year and a half of wearing masks and the flu job. And ironically, COVID is a respiratory illness. So was flu. The masks also prevented flu. So which means almost all of us who have had waning immunity from the previous flu vaccines are now all vulnerable. So as the flu vaccines become available in the next few weeks to the next few months, we highly recommend that you get vaccinated. And I will leave it to questions.
Thank you, Roberto. I was in the Stop and Shop this morning at 6:15, and I would say 2/3 of the shoppers had masks on. I thought it was great.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's a very crowded area. So wearing masks, there's not a lot of air exchanges there. There is an air curtain when you open a door. That's what that loud fan is, which keeps air inside the store. It doesn't create an air exchange. So wearing masks in the store is actually a good idea.
Any questions or comments, Christy?
hand.
It's kind of hard, and I got to remember to swivel and look.
I just had a question, Roberto. I saw, I think on Daybreak or The Current, that we were looking for volunteers for our vaccine clinics. Do people reach out to the health department or show up, or how could volunteers get involved?
Absolutely. Please, if reaching out to the health department at health@nantucket-ma.gov is the easiest way to do it. We do have a sign up sheet online. Right now I'm blanking out in the location. I know it's on the website somewhere, but it should be right at the top where it says coronavirus, and you just sign up there. But please just email us and we will get you on the list. So thank you.
Melissa?
Thanks, Roberto. When folks are tested here for COVID, are they testing for variants if they're positive? Is that part of the new normal now?
If you're testing for COVID and if you are fully vaccinated and you test positive, you have to come back in for a second test, and they will test that one for a variant. Often though, we get what's called lost to follow-up. They just don't pick up the phone after they find out they're positive, so we can't confirm.
Okay, thank you.
Don or Matt, any comments? Just one more, Roberto. Do we have the funding for the BioBot testing for this fall and winter? Because we know there's most likely going to be some type of resurgence.
So that was originally funded through the CARES Act. I believe we still have some funding left over for that. So we are going to be continuing it. And as long as David is willing, we will be continuing testing.
I think that would be important for
Yeah.
this.
And the good news is that as they've ramped up their laboratory and their abilities, the cost has gone down. So if you remember, originally the cost was $1,500 a test. And David, what's the cost now? About 800 now. So it's dropped by about half.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you, Roberto.
Excellent. Thank you.
Is there any other reports or comments, updates that's COVID related? Anything on your plate, Libby? Melissa?
Just a suggestion, while the vaccine clinics are going on, it might be nice to add that information to the agenda for people, just another way for people to access the information.
Is it announcements or more of the?
Maybe under announcements,
Yeah.
just to know that that's ongoing. I think it's a nice resource. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Okay. Thumbs up from Roberto. Okay, moving on to public comment. Is there any public comment here? Mr. Ruck, come on this side. Yeah. And then we'll move over to the Zoom attendees.
It's nice to be back in the public area now. Thomas Beretta, Toshma Lane. Just make a public comment in regard to last week we did you guys authorized a contract for up to $4 million for paving and whatnot for the different enterprise funds and stuff like that. Back in the day when Jeff Willett was here, Mohammed, Kara, we used to get the reports in regard to what road work was going to be done and what the costs were and how many lineal feet. And basically, we haven't gotten that in a while. And it's my understanding that we may be doing Nantucket Road this fall as part of this paving project for that $1 million or $1+ million from the Article 10 that was override. And, you know, there's a lot of other roads other than Nantucket Road that need some serious work. Some of the roads are falling apart. I mean, one prime example would be like Pleasant Street between Jefferson and Mill Street. Victor did that not even 10 years ago, and it's already fallen apart. There's a lot of roads that have heavy traffic, but not a lot of speed that are getting beat up. And I think we need to really, address it as island wide, but also to let the public know what's going to be done for projects. So if other people think that maybe there should be other stuff done, we can have some input on that. There's a lot of catch basins that are sunken. There's one on Somerset. I mean, Somerset Road itself, that whole road needs to be fixed. And the other thing is, we didn't get any line painting this year. There's no crosswalks, there's no yellow lines. Traffic's heavy. People don't know that there's crosswalks that are not from here because they've worn away. Usually we did them in the spring and then they did them in the fall. But that hasn't been done. So I just thought I'd bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beretta. Any other public comment here? Yep.
Hi, I'm smiling. You can't see it, but I am. Megan Ferry. I just have a quick question. Would it be possible to get a legal opinion on the most recent letter that the select board sent to the Conservation Commission asking to change their vote, seeing how the select board is essentially an applicant before the Concom and there may be a conflict there? Could we ask legal for their opinion on that?
This is public comment, so we'll take it in advisement and get back to you.
Great, thank you. Look
Thank you,
forward to
Megan.
it.
Any other public comment here? Can we go to the Zoom attendee? Thank you, Erica. And thank you, Mary, for waiting.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I would like to, my name is Mary Warrow. I live on Eat Fire Springs Road.
Mary, could you speak just a little louder? It's hard to hear you.
Is this better?
A little bit.
Can you
yeah.
hear me now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. My name is Mary Warrow. I live on Eat Fire Springs Road. I want to speak very briefly regarding the memo sent by the Select Board Chair to the Chair of the Conservation Commission dated July 8th, 2021. And that was pertaining to the reconsideration of the Conservation Commission's vote to require the removal of the SBPF geotubes. I speak for myself as a citizen, and I also speak at the request of Maureen Phillips, who is also as a citizen and a member, as a citizen, not as a member of the as a member of the Conservation Commission. She is at moment in transit and unable to speak at this meeting, even virtually. So I'm delivering this message for both of us. Your board should know that this memo is a serious strike at the heart of the town's governmental structure and a grave error. No one on this board has considered the matter before the Conservation Commission in the depth that each member of the Conservation Commission has done over many, many years. To presume to request a reconsideration at this time, when the hearing is closed, is inappropriate to say the least. This is particularly so given the divisive comments and invective publicly aired by the applicant's representatives and by others. The commission exercised its sound discretion in ordering the removal of the geotubes. Its action was neither arbitrary nor capricious. Delivery of an order of enforcement consistent with the order should happen without political interference from another body which has no authority on this matter. The board and the commission, as well as the applicant, should recognize that this is an administrative matter and should allow for and follow regular order if it is to be challenged. To do so otherwise places everyone in legal jeopardy. I note that the memo is dated July 8th, but apparently was not delivered to the commission until it was too late for the Conservation Commission to meet and formally respond before this meeting of the Select Board and the publication of the Inquirer and Mirror tomorrow. It is unfortunate that this board has chosen to proceed in this manner, adverse to the commission whose members they appoint. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Any other public comment? It's not on the agenda. Okay, moving on. There's no new business that I know of. We get a vote to approval of the minutes, payroll warrants, and treasury warrants.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wow, that was really fast. That passes unanimously. Pending contracts. We have one that was moved to from last week. That is the Commonwealth Resource Management. I think we've had multiple people reach out to Mr. Mandel on that. Libby, did you want to give any updates on that at all?
I believe the DPW director reached out to Mr. Mandel and or revised the scope that was at issue last week. And Mr. Mandel has indicated that he seems to be satisfied with that.
Okay.
There were 2 other contracts that were approved by the board last week. And if you want additional information on them, we do have people here to address it.
Is there approval of that the pending contract?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes 5-0.
Erica, this isn't showing on the Zoom.
I don't know how to make that fix, so, right?
Comment on the contract. I was happy to see the detail on the contract. And when I saw the detail, it made a lot more sense. The land station was 100 and something now, with a lot more work and potential with funds available for potential other work.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, when I read it on last week, it sounded like just sewer, but it's a lot more than that. So I'm pleased with that.
And thank you to town staff for being getting back to all these questions. I know Deputy Chief and Mr. McNeil wrote extensively explaining everything. So thank you. Okay, so we're going over to reports. We have an update from Arcadis on Baxter Road Engineering Feasibility Assessment Project. So we're going to go back to Zoom for this presentation.
Jason,
Yeah.
Sarah Ellis raised her hand. I don't
Oops.
know if it was on the pending
Oh,
contract.
sorry, I didn't see that. Oh, it's gone now.
It's gone. Okay.
Oh,
Oh, no.
there it is. You know, let Sarah in and see.
Hi, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Excuse me. I just wanted to say that the last person that spoke was inaudible on Zoom. Before Jason, excuse me.
So Mr. Fee, you couldn't hear Matt?
Yes.
Huh. Okay, thank you, Sarah.
I was really intelligent too. Did you hear that?
Did you hear that, Sarah?
Not what he said.
Well, it was really funny and witty.
I'm certain.
Thank you. We're working on that now. Thanks for the heads up. Sorry, Matt. Okay, so I believe that we have Kate Edwards. Is that correct?
Yes, and Jen Lockmeyer as well.
Hi, Jen. How are you? Okay, we're trying to figure this out, how to get you guys on here.
I think that I have the ability to share my screen, so I'm going to try sharing and
Okay.
we'll see if you
Yeah,
can see it.
we were invited as panelists. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine in the room, but I just wanted to let the public know that we're a couple, I would say 3 weeks ago, the Select Board and Conservation Commission and many at large in the public you gave us a presentation and we did surveys, and some of the results are in this survey. And so this is an update on that and a little bit of refinement from that. And we'll take some comments at the end, but we're going to try to be brief because this is just an update to the public and to the boards and town staff. Go ahead.
Super. Okay. Thank you for having us tonight. We can go to the next slide. This is the overview of what we'll talk about tonight. And the purpose of this meeting is an update on the project status. Thank you, Kate. I'm Jennifer Kelly Lockmeyer. I am the project director and principal in charge for this assignment, and Kate Edwards is our project manager. And the other people shown here have been presenting. There are technical specialists and our engineer who have been working consistently on the project and involved in the meetings. Here is the refined project mission. We had started with an original project mission, and we've been refining it as we go through the various public meetings. And since it's in the packet, I won't read it to you now. We'll keep going. We had been working with all the different groups to come up with a better name for the project. And currently the leader is the Baxter Road Neighborhood Adaptation Plan. So we certainly can name the report that and start calling it that if we're all so inclined. So where we are now, here's the overall project schedule. And you can see the little where we are arrow. So we'll talk about it in a minute, but we are getting ready for the next round of public meetings, excuse me, public meetings and public input. And we hope to have them in August. We had been asked to deliver the technical memo earlier. We're currently targeting September 9th to deliver a draft for review. It will depend on the ability to meet with the next rounds in August. So where we are now, we've completed the review of existing information, and all those documents are posted. We've held a bunch of the stakeholder engagement, and we have one more round to go. We're working on the alternatives and feasibility analysis, and we do understand, that there are changes, and we'll talk about how we're incorporating those. And then we'll begin the summary of findings and recommendations. We have begun to draft the initial technical memo. So these are the focus groups that we've been meeting with, and we really thank you all for your input, and also for all the different documents and cross-checking of the documents that we've been working with. Really, you are the most knowledgeable about the community and about the impacts, and it's been very helpful that you've brought different documents to our attention as we go through. So thank you.
Great. So can everyone hear me okay? Just want to make sure. Yes?
I can hear you.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to go over just a brief overview of the risk that we're talking about in this area. And the risk comes from FEMA erosion projections, which are a statistical analysis and most appropriate for a longer term look. So we're looking at planning horizons from 2030, 2050, and 2100. 2030, and we'll show you this a little bit more in the greenish color, 2050 in the purple, and 2100. And you can imagine that the line, the solid line, will be where the shoreline is expected to be during that time frame due to erosion. This analysis did not include any shoreline protection, such as the geotubes that are currently in place, and used a variety of data sources, including historic surveys and LiDAR data from back in way back. So just stepping through the area, these are some of the graphics we have previously shown, but if you're just attending for the first time, at the northern end of Baxter Road, you can see those same colors. The green line is 2030, purple 2050, and yellow 2100, and everything seaward of that would be expected to have been eroded away around that time frame, according to these projections. You can see that in 2030, we are losing homes and approaching the road and well within what has previously been considered the safety measure for distance from road to bluff edge. And then in 2050, further back in 2100, even further back. And as we step through the area, you'll see these projections go along the way. One thing to note is, you know, in 2100, in this area, we're starting to come back towards Pulpus Road and losing not only the access at Baxter Road, but other forms of access to the area. And toward the southern end, as we come down in the southern end, you'll see those lines push a little bit seaward of the land in the earlier phases, 2030 and 2050. And not as high of a risk of loss down here. Some of the other things we've been talking to the groups about are tax implications, and this is something that we are continuing to evaluate and wanted to get a little bit more input from the select board on the path forward around this. But if you look at the affected properties by those 3 lines I just showed in those timeframes, 2030, 2050, and 2100, with the tax information we had, which is from 2013 taxes, the affected properties and what they pay for taxes is shown, and it jumps from around 20,000 to 150,000. And so this has a, you know, an impact on the community in terms of loss of those properties, and transference of needing that tax revenue will really fall to others in the community then. And so that's a look that we've been doing. And we'll continue to do. We are going to be working with the assessor to get more updated information. So this is just a snapshot in time from that 2013 timeframe. I don't know if we want to pause here for any guidance on a look forward on the tax implications and what you all were hoping to understand, or other financial considerations in this arena.
Jason, I have a quick question.
Sorry, we have one question. Okay, Melissa?
Sure.
Hi, Kate, Melissa Murphy. On this graph that you're showing in the loss by time periods, if we were to look at total loss by 2100, we would add those 3 graphs together, or are they, is this incremental?
It's sort of like, yes, it's sort of additive, but you would assume that in that northern region, we will have already lost it. But yes, it is cumulative. So it's adding everything together that you would have lost by 2100.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
And just to add, I'm not sure that I have any other feedback on that, other than I think it's important for us to know those total numbers as we start to evaluate the overall loss of the area. But I have no other feedback on that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is Matt Pre-K. The taxes is a small part of loss. And I think, you know, looking at it just from a tax standpoint, I think is a bit of a mistake for the cost, because there's the cost of road relocations, and it's more than just one. It's Pulpus Road, et cetera. There's the cost of takings. We will be required as a town to provide those services and provide the infrastructure, and we'll be provided to take it. We'll have to take it to provide it to people. There's the cost of litigation if you can't come together on this, you know, with short, medium, and long term. And then there's the cost of sand or other materials, other structures that we are required to try to, you know, slow some of this long enough to do it. And those are all, and there may be things I'm not even thinking about. And I think it was, I think the last quote we got 6 years ago or so was about 6 million to replace the road. It's probably 10 to 12 million now, and that was just replacing the northern part of Baxter Road. You know, talking about our back right now when we put bids out, and people are bidding pretty high on us. And so I think that, you know, double that right now, and then look at all the other areas that will have to also be dealt with by the town. So I think, Kate, that there's more costs that need to be considered. And some of it was the tax. In some ways, that will get just rolled on to everybody else. You know, if it's $250,000, these will disappear, and that will still be the legal limit will stay the same, and that'll get rolled on to everybody else. But it's all the other costs that's going to get rolled on to people
that I worry about. So,
Yes, so for
and what-
clarification, the question I was aiming to get at was, so we will be looking at the cost of the road replacement and the other types of alternatives that we're looking at, and the implications of those. So all the things that you brought up, Matt, are very important. And I guess the question we were just, part of our scope is to look at tax implications. We've got a total here, just wondering if there was any other format or kind of things you were looking for in terms of tax implication before we move forward with it.
Yeah, and Matt, we had already included a draft of some of the cost implications of the road relocation and order of magnitude costs on some of the different alternative pathways. And we'll be continuing to refine all those types of costs as we move forward with the different adaptive approaches.
And I've seen those, Jen, thank you. This was partly for public consumption.
Absolutely. No, but well put, Matt. And I can hear you now. That's very nice.
I know, about halfway through, we got it.
Yeah.
All right,
Kate,
so
we have some hands up from the public. I'm going to take those at the end. So you
yeah, I
guys-
think that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a few more slides, not too long. Another way we quantify cost or loss is building and content replacement. And these are estimated based on various factors. They're generally order of magnitude and include homes only, no utilities or no land, but you can see you're upwards, towards the 90 million mark by 2100 of losses of homes and content. These are based on Nantucket prices and information, and this is just a small breakdown from just this area. You'll see some of these other quantifying of loss in the larger coastal resilience plan for the whole island. Wanted to kind of walk through the alternatives we've been looking at, and I understand the current climate and want to clarify a few things that we have looked at. But when we have been looking at alternatives, we wanted to evaluate based on the existing system in place and what could be changed about that system, whether it's no change from what's going on, perhaps looking at the way that the sand is placed on the geotubes and making that more adaptive in nature, expanding of that system, removal of the system, retreat and Baxter Road relocation, adding nearshore breakwaters out into the water, and no action. When we talk about this, we're talking about the system that might be in place being more of a true system. So the approach really looked at the engineering and coastal process perspective and the understanding that bluff protection cannot be achieved without tow stabilization. So alternatives that provide bluff protection, which many of them in that table do need to include tow stabilization. We explored other forms of innovative protection, but some would not provide tow stabilization. And removal of the current system and replacement with another form of tow stabilization, which we'll talk about in a minute, is possible. It is feasible, but it would also have environmental and cost impacts, so we can talk about those. With these considerations, our analysis was completed with the system in place for most of the alternatives, with a single variable changing over time. It was at that time, obviously, a permitted and a system that we were hoping that these alternatives would reflect something that was on the ground, but could become back into compliance maybe. But really, we were looking at anything we looked at for tow stabilization or alternatives in terms of moving the road had to take into consideration the purpose of it, the service life, the initial construction costs, operations and maintenance, constructability, and other feasibility issues. So I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but you can see we kind of started to do this mind map, and we'll have one of these hopefully for each of the alternatives that we explored. But if you just go across, like what alternative, what coastal process does it address? Along shore transport? What engineering processes address along shore transport? So we thought of groins, near shore breakwaters, and a near shore berm. The groins, we think of Jersey Shore. Is it feasible? No, no hardened structures are allowed on the beach. Near shore breakwaters, we think of those out in Virginia. Is it feasible? Potentially, and we've seen some interest by stakeholders. A near shore berm, we eliminated that due to concerns for the cobble habitat. And we walked through these types of things as we thought about the alternatives analysis. So tow stabilization alternatives, we've gotten some questions on thinking about what else could go there. So, and the CZM interpretation of the coastal wetland regulations and how they should be applied. So without going too deep into that, just wanted to show that something like a jute or coconut fiber roll is typically applied to help protect from more frequent storms that are of lower intensity and in low wave energy environments. They're just not quite as resilient. And we have a full spectrum of the types of things we were looking at, knowing that definitely seawalls and stone revetments weren't going to be easily permitted, but are more protective and more resilient for the infrequent higher intensity storms with higher wave action. Geotubes kind of were in place and were permitted. And so we looked at that system, but that is not to say that when and if they come out, they could not be replaced by the coconut fibers or the softer erosion controls, as some might call them. Those are an option. They just may not be as resilient, and they may need to be replaced many, many times. And then I think I'm going to turn it back over to Jen.
Yep. So here's just a summary of some of the things that we've heard from our different meetings that we're continuing to incorporate and adjust to. That there is a desire for consideration of soft erosion control installations, that you desire an island-wide sediment transport study. There have been a lot of different questions around the sediment transport and island-wide impacts. A desire to understand the feasibility of near shore breakwater options a bit more. And so we'll look at those a little bit more and expand on that. A need to understand the tax implications and costs to the residents more. A desire to have an understanding of combined adaptation pathways, which is absolutely where we'll be heading. And another question was, what would the cost of a buyout program be? That's just a summary. So as we move forward with the adaptation pathways, this is sort of a guiding wheel of how we think about it and how we apply it. It must meet the short and long-term adaptation needs of the community, and those we've worked to define. And then it needs to promote collaboration, learning, and adaptive planning and adaptive capacity. And you'll see, we'll show you in a minute an example that shows basically we're identifying, tipping points as to when we might employ multiple strategies, or we might be switching a strategy. And so those are the pathways that we're now starting to further define and elaborate on for our next round of meetings. It also needs to account for the complexity and long-term change, and it has to consider potential for a need for transformation. So those are sort of our guiding principles as we think about the pathways. And here was an example of a pathway that we had worked through in the public meeting as an example, and we did it interactively and online. But as we know now, we'll be incorporating other components at the same time. And so our upcoming activities are to have another round of stakeholder meetings in August. We are going back and looking further at the adaptation pathways. We're also currently continuing to work on the costs of the different solutions. And I think we're maybe targeting the third week of August for the next stakeholder meetings. And there would also be a public meeting at large. And I think that might be all of our slides for now.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Kate. Any questions or comments from the board before I go to the public?
Just a quick question. Sure. Adaptive dune nourishment. Can you kind of explain that to the public, please?
Sure. So right now, as permitted, something like the geotubes, the way that the permit is written is that there's a defined and finite quantity of or volume of sand that needs to be placed on the geotubes. And adaptive nourishment looks at how much of that sand is lost over the course of some time frame, the year, the sand year, the calendar year. It can be done in a couple different ways. And what volume must bring that back up to the design volume that it was designed to be covered by. So in 1 year, you could lose a lot of sand and have to put a lot of sand on top of the geotubes or other system of tow stabilization, right? And then in another year, maybe not so bad. You just need to refill it to what it was designed to be originally.
Any follow-ups? Don?
No, sorry, go.
I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about the nearshore breakwaters and if there's any further information after our last meeting.
One of the things we've been thinking about, I'll flip back to the table, I guess, is that if something like the jute rolls goes in in place of what's there now or in other locations, that they're not as good for that wave action, that wave energy, and nearshore breakwaters might be something that would be good at knocking down some of those waves, and actually another line of defense that would help make the jute rolls or any tow stabilization last a little bit longer. They also help with holding up some sand and having sand stay around a little bit longer. We are looking a little bit more at the bathymetry in the area to understand just how deep it goes and how quickly. And we did do a cursory look at that, and also trying to figure out what the cost implications really are and how feasible they really would be in terms of cost benefit.
Thank you, Don. Any other questions? Is there anyone in the public who'd like to speak on this? Okay. Can we go to Mr. Atherton? Online.
Hi, Jason.
We can hear you.
Okay. Thanks, Jason. I just had a
Rick, we
comment.
had a little bit,
Feedback.
Rick,
I'm
we had a
not
little
sure
bit of
from
echo.
where. It may be on my end. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Do you have two computers on in there on your end with audio?
Can you hear me, Jason?
Yeah, that's much better. Please go ahead. We'll get this figured out. Can you hear me, Rick? I can hear you now. Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Jason, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
No,
Speak it up. Can you hear me, Rick?
I can hear you, Jason. I don't know if you can hear me though. But I don't want to hold this up. So you go ahead. If I can figure it out, great. If I can't, I can't.
We can hear you. It's just delay. I can hear my voice 10 seconds ago on your end coming through our microphones, our audio. Maybe come back in, Rick. Log out, come back in, and we'll see if that'll fix it. Yeah, we'll take you out and bring you back in. Let's try that first.
Can you hear me now, Jason?
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry, that was all my fault, and I took far too much time to figure it out, so I apologize. I only wanted to make a general comment on the tax discussion early on. And I've been around this long enough to understand what the issues are. I think it would be helpful as the consultants discuss that they help the viewers understand that this has been going on around the island for centuries. I mean, I can remember when Hooper Farm Road at the end had not Hooper Farm, when Hummock Pond at the end had a whole road or two at the end of the beach that are now all gone, and we lost all that revenue. And I'm sure we've lost revenue at Sheep Pond Road. I've heard that there have been, I don't know the facts, whether or not people on Easton Street have sought abatements of their tax assessments because of their own climate change risks. So it's going on all over the island. It's not unique to Baxter Road. And I just think it's helpful to put that in perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. I just want to let the board know that Vincent Murphy is here. He's our coastal resiliency coordinator. So if we had any questions for him, he's also available. Any other questions from the public? Oh, go ahead. We'll let Deanne in.
Can you hear me, Jason?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Speaking on behalf of the Nantucket Coastal Conservancy, and we have two brief comments, both of which we will submit in writing. The first is a letter from one of our team members, Barbara Bund, whom we refer to as the Sand Lady, and she has written a very succinct memo which explains the different estimates for SBPF sand deficit. I won't go into that, but we will submit that tomorrow to Erica. We have enjoyed our working with the consultants. They've been very responsive to our suggestions, and we have shared some very frank and candid comments with them, some of which they have responded to and some of which they have not. We will be forwarding those comments to you in writing again so that you have them and can understand kind of another viewpoint. I think overall, we're extremely concerned that this presentation displays a lack of understanding of the regulatory and environmental concerns about using geotubes. The current conditions, that is geotubes, remain a base assumption for all but one of the alternatives. The most important point we'd like to make tonight, however, is the CONCOM voted on May 17th to find the existing geotube project in failure. And it voted on June 30th to order removal of the geotubes. All but one of the Arcadis alternatives assume the geotubes are in place. Therefore, those alternatives are no longer relevant. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanne. Any other thoughts, comments from the board? Okay. Sure.
Yeah, I'll make when I make this every chance I can. We talk short, medium, long term. We talk about retreat, and in some places, even in Baxter Road, at some point, we are going to have to retreat. But the first step of retreat is to not go forward, and it's not to build in these areas that are at risk, and not to build as much and as quickly. And that is going to be a very difficult, political decision, and it's gonna. There are some areas that we just probably shouldn't be doing what we're doing going forward. And we're going to have to do some things in areas that, sort of the state doesn't allow, or we don't like now, to preserve those areas as long as we can. And so I think that this is very, very complex. And I think, and I'm not saying it's complex and we can't understand it. We can't make the right choice because we're going to, as a community, are going to have to. But I hope that we can do it in a way that brings the majority of us together, and that we find a way to, to move forward as cooperatively as possible. And that's what this has been an attempt to do that. And it's an ongoing attempt, and we're trying to, work out a solution and work our way through it. And so, it's, not going forward is going to be very difficult. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Just look around to anybody else comment. Okay. Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Jennifer from Arcadis. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a hand raised, Mr. Atherton. Thank you.
Jason, thanks. Can you hear me this time?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of make a general comment, a second to what Matt just referenced about the difficulty. And he referred to whether there were some areas we shouldn't be building in at all, perhaps. But just to help everybody remember, there was an article before town meeting 3 or 4 years ago. It came back again last year. And it wasn't to not allow people to build on their property next to erosion distressed areas or next to areas subject to possible erosion. It was just about a system of asking the people who choose to build there to be informed and understand their personal responsibility and waive any liability they might exert in the future against the town. And that, to me, is just I think, a very straightforward. I would hope that people building there would have no problem with that. They don't anticipate having to sue the town over anything. And asking them to waive their liability is very reasonable. But we couldn't even get town staff to even approach that question with any kind of positive outlook. And that's just symptomatic of the difficulty we all face in a number of areas here. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah,
Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I agree with Rick. I think it was a smart article, and I think hopefully we will, at the end of the coastal resiliency process, hopefully we will begin to address what's the, fair and equitable way to do that. But I agree, it's something we need to, sort of wrestle to the ground.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks again, Kate and Jen from Arcadis. Thanks for the public and the comments. We're going to move on to the second part of our reports, third sewer force main project. We're going to review additional requested improvements and surface features impacted along the route outside of designated appropriation. We have David Gray here, and I think online we also have Ziad and Frank. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. It's great to see everybody.
Good evening.
Sewer Director. We do have with us Ziad Carey, who's the design engineer for the third force main, and Frank Ayat, who is our OPM for the project. They're going to bring us through most of the slides. Just want to give a little bit of a brief introduction as we go. We've had a lot of meetings with DPW. We've been in front of the Nantucket Historical Commission on all of this, which Ziad and Frank will discuss a little bit further. A lot of on-sites, a lot of walkthroughs. So we have done a lot of due diligence on this. And with that, I'll turn it over to Frank, who will start out, and then Ziad will come in shortly thereafter.
Okay, thanks, David.
You see the screen, Frank? Just make sure.
Yes, I can. If you could go to the second slide, Ziad.
Sure.
Okay, thanks, David. As David said, I'm Frank Ayat. I'm with Hazen and Sawyer, the town's project representative overseeing the design engineer environmental partners group, which we have with us today, Ziad Carey. Tonight's presentation will go over DPW improvements requested along the force main route that are not eligible for funding under the force main. So these elements include sidewalks, excuse me, cobbling, crosswalks, some additional drainage, and some pavement restoration. Ziad is now going to go over the details of each one of these, along with the funding sources and how we plan to package them in the force main project, provided with town approval. Ziad?
Thanks, Frank. Ziad Carey with Environmental Partners Group. Good evening, everyone. So the next set of slides would pretty much quantify what's really shown on this one here, and we'll go into like much more details as to what is involved over and above the normal force main installation. So starting from the beginning of the force main alignment right across from the C Street pump station, there is the connectivity of sidewalk, which pretty much extends from across number 5 C Street to number 13 North Water Street. And in particular, the force main, I don't know if you can see the mouse hovering up here, the new force main comes out and kind of hugs the gutter line. So basically this sidewalk may have to be removed and reset. The connectivity would extend from here, from the end of the current brick sidewalk all the way to number 13 North Water Street. And in particular, this would involve approximately about 67 square yards of work. There's 120 feet of reclaimed curbing that would have to be installed to make the sidewalk possible, because beyond this hydrant up here, there's no curbing. There is approximately removing and resetting of 180 linear feet of curbing that you see on the existing sidewalk. The brick itself would have to be about 67 for remove and reset. And for the additional sidewalk, that would require about 67 square yards of brickwork. And then further down, we have a summary of approximate cost, anticipated cost for these additions. The next set would be the reconfiguration of the sidewalk on Lily Street, just where the Rob McNeil's car, the DPW car here, is located. So what this age 3 has tremendous roots, and the intent was to take the curbing and then loop it around a little bit to, 1, allow for the tree protection, and then 2, provide some additional safe passage for pedestrians. This also would allow to maintain a 14-foot travel lane from the edge of the curb to the opposite side of the street there. And this would involve approximately 33 square yards of brick sidewalk that have to be installed, and then a crosswalk that would get folks from one side to the other. And the curbing could be done with, most likely this has to be done with radius curbing, but potentially could also be done with straight curbing, and that will all be reclaimed. The third topic here is, and this has been a problem, actually David brought it up in the cold and in the winters. Obviously there's a lot of ice damming up here, and the thought process would be to connect the sidewalk, and this utility pole that you see leaning up here would be encapsulated within the new sidewalk, and curbing would extend. In addition to the curbing and sidewalk installation, there would be approximately about 200 linear feet of curbing, obviously, and 250 feet of drainage that would, connect 2 structures into the existing system. A little further up the road there is configuration for 4 wheelchair ramps. Currently,
Yeah, can I stop you right there?
Yep.
I had a question on
Can
the,
we go back one, please?
This
Yeah,
one?
is there any consideration to widening this? I mean, this is gonna make it more narrow and it's already treacherous in that area already. Has there been any discussion of sort of going the other direction? And widen the road a little bit and
We couldn't, obviously, the widen because the right of way isn't that, would have to be some land taking involved to be able to widen the road. But I think during construction we could look into it, but we haven't really looked into widening the road here at this stage.
Yeah, one comment on that, Ziad. Part of the SRF loan requirements are to ensure that the force mains project everything is within the right of way and on town-owned property. These elements are in addition to outside the scope of the force main projects, but are identified improvements for DPW. Where we see where this curbing would be installed next to the sidewalk would actually provide a natural drainage line right up to that catch basin. It's not a significant distance of that patch of pavement where you're putting that curb line, but it will define the street and drainage channel, if that helps.
yeah. And I think I'm gonna slide it to ahead. This one isn't so bad. It's the next one up. You're gonna go up 2. So that, I've jumped ahead, but keep going.
Okay.
This one? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so so the next one here, we basically when we establishing about 4
yeah, I'm
wheelchair
gonna stop you there 1 second. Sorry, Dawn.
Oh, I'd like to echo what Matt was saying. If there was an opportunity, maybe not necessarily full takings, but to take some easements to do any kind of widening along that street, it would be really beneficial to the traffic flow.
So I think to also touch on this question, this is a good question there too, but I think, in situations where all utilities are being replaced within the roadway and the curbing and the sidewalk would be reset, if there is an opportunity if we have enough for ADA on the sidewalk itself during construction, we could gain about a foot of width within the roadway. Certainly we could consider that during construction as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Erica.
I was just gonna say, as you all know, takings take a while. This project is slated to start this fall, so they may not work together in terms of the timeline needed for takings, which should have been a year ago for work for this fall.
Go ahead, Ziad. Thank you.
On the next setup here, we're talking about establishing 4 wheelchair ramps. What you see on the right side of the picture here, there's the curbing. This would be reconfigured for a wheelchair ramp, and part of the sidewalk would have to be reset, part of the brick. On the opposite side, which is Huzzy Lane, you'll see in the next picture. This would connect basically the 2 streets up here across, and that would involve on this side also there's 2 wheelchair ramps, and then the bituminous concrete would be replaced with brick to match the opposite side. This is the drainage pipe that we discussed a little bit earlier, just a different view of it, 200 linear feet, and that would involve adding 2 structures to basically convey the flow from here and connect to the existing system in this corner up here. On Atlantic Avenue, there was 6 structures that needed to be replaced. So this would involve replacing 6 structures. There's about 25 square yards of bituminous concrete. By the time you get into the sidewalk, those would be replaced, and some curbing would have to be reset. On this opposite side, some loam restoration, approximately 50 square yards. And then the total drainage pipe would be about 50 linear feet, and again, would be 6 structures that would need to be replaced. Today, everybody knows that, or everybody is aware that within Winter Street, there's cobblestones that exist, And the thought process would be, by the way, Winter Street is about 800 feet plus or minus, and everything on Winter would have to be replaced. We're replacing water, putting a new force main in there, we're replacing drain, and then we're also replacing gravity sewer. And part of that would be some sidewalk restoration, curbing, and full depth reclamation of Winter Street. So the thought process here would be to save the brick and transport it to the DPW, and this would be part of the base bid. And then we'll talk about the bid alternates on the next couple of slides. So summarizing what we just talked about, we lumped them together, and this list this is a priority list. And the bid documents are structured such that the base bid would only include the installation of the force main and the force main components and any upgrades, utility upgrade along the alignment. That would be water, gravity sewer, and then drain. And the list was prioritized by the DPW based on, and again, these are called bid alternates. So we're going to list five of them in the contract document. And the basis of award will be the base bid. And if there is money left in the contract and there is an appetite to do this work, obviously we cannot skip from 1 to 5. We have to go in order. And the order was, again, discussed by the DPW. So the first order would be Liberty Street drainage, and approximate cost is about $80,000. And on the right-hand column here is where the source of the money would be coming from, which is the stormwater system improvement. And again, this is an estimated cost because we don't really know until we get into the ground and see what the conditions are going to look like. The second bid alternate kind of lumps the C Street, Liberty Street, Lily Street sidewalk, including the wheelchair ramps that we just showed in the previous slides, and the crosswalks. The crosswalks would be just line painting with epoxy painting, and then the wheelchairs will obviously be constructed with brick, and the granite curbing would be reset. The street drainage, that includes the 6 structures that we talked about and the 50 linear feet of drainage pipe. Approximate cost is about $70,000, and this comes from the stormwater system upgrades improvement. The Pleasant Street and the Silver Street parking lot paving, the force main comes from Silver Street and then kind of sweeps right through the parking lot. And there was some discussions about restoring the parking lot, paving, and everything else. And the thought process coming through the parking lot on the corner is to avoid the trees in the roadway. So coming off the parking lot will be partially in the sidewalk to avoid the trees and to avoid one asbestos concrete water pipe, which we try to avoid at all costs. And then once we're beyond that, we transition back into the roadway. And the cost associated with this is approximately $120,000. And then the Winter Street cobblestones, that's the last one. It's about $275,000. And of course, we suspect that cobblestones may exist, not just only on Winter, but they could exist on some other places within the force main alignment. So we have a contingency in there in the base bid to take that brick and, no, I'm sorry, not the brick, but the cobbles, and then stockpile them and deliver them to the DPW so the DPW could use them on future projects. And it's important to note here that if the price is too high and the Winter Street cobble is not accepted as part of the base bid and bid alternate, if the price is too high, again, we could take the brick, deliver it to the DPW, and DPW will do it under a separate contract in the future.
Yes, one thing to add, Ziad, on that, if you can go back, these bid alternates, we walked the site with the DPW, specifically Director Rob McNeil, Sewer Director David Gray, and we came up with this order of priorities based on the funding sources. As Ziad said, the bid alternates contractor, these are engineering cost estimates, but the contractor will actually put a cost in for each one of these alternates, and they have to be accepted in the order that they're shown. In other words, you can't take 1, then 3, then 5. It's either, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you exclude from the bottom up. I just wanted that to be clear. We also had a chance to meet with Nantucket Historical Commission to present these proposed improvements and get their feedback as well. So I thought that
Thank you,
was
Frank. I
important.
have some questions for Ziad.
Yeah.
Thank you. On Atlantic Ave, it says drainage, but you said there were some sidewalk improvements. Is that going to be widened? Is it just the curbing kind of lifted up, replaced, cleaned up a little bit? 'Cause I know you've got a lot of trees over there. It's a tricky area.
Yep, good question, Jason. So within what you see here in this picture, there's 6 structures. 2 of them happen to be offset and actually in the sidewalk. So part of that replacement of the drainage structures, there could be, or there would be some sidewalk replacement as well to restore it.
That's included in the, whatever it was, 70,000? Seemed like
That would be correct, yes.
Okay. And all the curbing that can be removed and put back is that the standard we're using in all these?
That's the idea. Anything that could be removed and it's in good shape would have to be, it's all reclaimed. And if we can't get it, we'll have to get new curbing that matches what we got up there.
All right, thank you. I have a question on the Pleasant Street, on the Silver Street parking lot. Is it just repaving or is there any drainage improvements there? Because that's always flooded since I've lived here.
Yes, correct. So I think I may have skipped over this pretty quick. So the red line, that was the initial fourth main alignment. And what we're doing up here with the blue line, similar to what I was just mentioned early on, right in this corner, there's a lot of aged trees and roots. And obviously, if we were to come right through on the right side of the, depending, I guess, how you're looking, on this side of the road, there's a chance that we may damage all these trees. But in order to avoid them, we're going to sweep the corner of the parking lot. We're not really impacting the drainage, but the cost and the improvements within this parking lot only include paving. So basically taking out the existing paving and building, building the subgrade and then do full course pavement within the parking lot.
Can I comment on the parking lot?
Yeah.
One of the thoughts I have looking at that is I would like to avoid putting a force main in the parking lot. I think, at some point in the fairly near future, that is, the town already owns it. It's an ideal place to put row houses for town employee housing or other housing. I would hate to be in a situation where we put a force main or a big thing there and can't develop that property. I think we talk about, putting housing into the, density into the town areas close to where people work. I think it's an ideal location and we already own it. And you could still have 10 or 12 spaces there. It would be, you could model it after the row houses on Orange Street. It would look like it had been there for 300 years. So if we could find a way not to, take that option off the table for the future, I would like to do that.
Certainly, we could take the sweep and then make it come into this corner a little further, so we're not really into the parking lot that much. But that would put us on line to install the fourth main within the sidewalk. That's really the. I mean, we could look into shifting this a little bit further to get us from the parking lot. And just to show you where we're at today, back in March 2021, we submitted the 60% design document to the town, and we sent a copy to DEP on May 12th for the 75% design. As a matter of fact, tomorrow we're completing the 100% design, and then the 100% will go to DEP and the checklist for the SRF program. And one copy will go to David Gray, one copy will go to Frank and his group to review. And what we're hoping to do is get a permission from Mass DEP to advertise and then award the contract sometimes between August 15th and September 30th. And then we're hoping to get the notice to proceed by October 15th with a start of construction on November 1. As discussed in the past, this project is about 3 years worth of construction. That's not counting the summertime, obviously. This would be limited to October 1 through May 31st. And then we'll take off 4 months off during the summer, and then we'll be back the next couple of years. And with that, we would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ziad. So I just want to try to be clear. Is this just a kind of an FYI? You know, because I think Matt and I probably have some other ideas. And is this pretty much set in stone with no changes to be made?
No. So once we receive the 100%, a change like Matt suggested around the parking lot is really not a significant impact to make at this stage. The significant impacts would be wholesale, anything with a land taking or as such that, typically these improvements were outside the force main project, and we have a $32 million loan riding on getting an award to a contractor by October 28th. So we can make anything within the public right of way. But if we're talking about wholesale streetscapes and land takings with road widenings, that would be significantly more difficult to do and it could affect the project schedule.
Okay.
Yeah, my goal wouldn't be to hold it up. My goal would be if there were a way to that homeowners would give easements, like Don mentioned, and we were able to, improve sort of Liberty Street area, which is pretty treacherous now. I think we should try to do that. We may not be there for a year and a half. If there's time to do that between now and then, I think we should try to do that. Not holding this up and not costing us a lot more money, but could try to do it once.
That makes sense, Matt. Comments or questions before we go to the public? Christy?
Thank you. I just have more of a comment that I think it's really great as we do these improvements that we're looking at wheelchair ramps and becoming ADA compliant. I think that's a really good step in this. Thanks.
Thanks, Christy. Okay. Let's see. We've got, go ahead, Mr. Barretta, and then, yep, I see it. Just at least right now, I'm going to go who's here first for public comment, and then I'll go to online just to try to have some system.
I have a couple questions in regard. Erica, could you go back to? Oh, they have the control. All right. Could you go back to Lily Street where it shows the DPW vehicle parked next to the tree? We want to, I guess there's an idea to be able to bump that out. And big question that I have is, yep, right there. That looks like it's going to be 2 or 3 parking spaces that will be lost on that street. And there's like no parking down there anywhere. So to bump that out to, I guess, save routes, even though it's already paved over, we're going to lose 3 parking spaces there. And then on the next one with the granite with the telephone pole, that one, A, I hope National Grid replaces the pole before we do the work. But B, that curbing, is that going to be a rounded edge curbing or a straight edge curbing? Because I know a few clients of mine have lost tires on the straight edge curbing trying to get around stuff. And it's going to become a problem pretty soon when that road gets a little thinner, as Matt mentioned, how treacherous it is there, that people are going to hit those curbs and they're going to lose tires. And as a side note, I forgot this in public comment, but are we fixing the curb down at Easy Street Basin where it bumps out by about 12 inches from the land bank project? Somebody brought that to attention before. But anyway, I don't mean to digress to that, but those are some questions that I have in regard, because we keep replacing all these curbs, pulling out the old curbs and putting in straight cut granite curbs that aren't historic or anything like that. So if we're going to do this, can we go with old traditional, or at least some of the stockpile that we should have at the DPW?
Yeah, I can answer that question. So where we have all this curb, we're reusing an all reclaimed curb. So if there is additional available curb at DPW that's historic or has been used in the town before, but it's stockpiled, we will use that. As an alternate, we have a DPW approved curb that I think Rob can describe a little bit better, that, mirrors the look of the historical curb fairly well. And it is not a sharp edged curb. I know when we're designing this project, DPW had some pretty strict requirements on what type of curb to use and what not to use. So we're specifying the materials that are approved by DPW.
Frank, can I ask you another question on off of Mr. Barrett? Is the curbing going to be street level, or is it going to be up 3 inches? Because everyone cars.
So there will be a slight reveal. I believe, Ziad, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was no more than a 4-inch reveal.
We're targeting a 4-inch reveal, with the exception if you're not doing the, let's just say you're looking at a situation where you're only putting a water service here or a sewer service, and you're only going to disturb 3 pieces of curb, those will be reset to match adjacent curbing. So basically, but everywhere else where we're going with new or remove, remove and reset, we're going to target about no more than 4 inches.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Here, live in person?
Yes, it's great to be back, seeing everyone in person. Thank you very much for allowing me to make a comment. I'm Hillary Hedges-Rayport. I live in town seasonally, and I chair the Nantucket Historical Commission. So our commission, as you've been informed, spent a lot of time with Ziad and Frank and David. We were very appreciative of the time. They met with us by Zoom on June 4th. And we spent a lot of time reviewing the project. We gave a lot of comments. We saw these same photographs that are being presented to you, and one of our questions was just about the details. So I guess the main question that I have, and really a request from this board, is to have your support in agreeing to a process where actual drawings can be reviewed. We reviewed 75% plans for the rest of the project, and as you heard, we'll be given the chance to review the 100% plans and comment. The sewer department's been fantastic about that. And I think the town will really be happy, I hope, with the feedback and the project. These portions of the plans, you're seeing, really rough schematics and ideas. We certainly, just speaking as residents, many people on the commission live in this area. There hadn't been, a community meeting or discussion about these projects or opportunity to make requests, but we actually did note a number of these needs that matched up with what the DPW noted. So we're certainly supportive, but it's all in the details. I mean, I would certainly never want to say, yeah, this all looks great based on photographs and conceptual marks on photographs. So I'm really asking for the board's support in, this process of having a committee, other review for these DPW projects involving sidewalks. The details in the town are really important. The material is historic. There's new material that we just care about how it looks, as you've heard from other people in the audience. So I'd love to hear some comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. I would also suggest if BPAC is the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee has kind of been defunct over COVID, but we're trying to get back in August. And so to have, whether it's as these projects come in, to have them walk it, just to have a pedestrian and bicycle kind of view on it, if it's within the current cost and scope, that would also be nice.
Do we have to make that as a motion, or is this something that's going to happen, or for BBAC or for historical commission or other? How do we ensure that it does happen if that's something we want to do?
Good question. I would look to Libby on if you need consensus or motion. But I also, I guess, point of clarification for Hillary is you said that you've seen the 75%, and you'll see the 100%. Is there any more that you want?
Well, I don't know if these changes are going to be in the 100% plan.
Right.
So I guess that's a question.
Yeah, so I can answer that. So right now, the changes that you see in this presentation are included in the 100% as bid alternates. And there's no harm in doing that, because if let's just say if the board were to just even say, no, we're not including any of these, we can still leave them in the contract. You just don't accept them as part of the bid. So that's the beauty of the bid alternate is, it allows us, it gives us the time to design it, include it in there, but if you don't want it, we can always reject it. So the intent is to include all the elements you've seen presented here this evening, and the groupings that you saw in the bid alternates will be in the contract documents. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Ziad, but that's the intent.
So Frank, so when the 100% plan drawings, actually, these concepts will be drafted as
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Hillary. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So in that case, we'll have a chance to comment, and we can share our
Yes.
comments with you. There was one other thing I forgot to mention, which was about the cobblestones. Nantucket loves cobblestones. It's part of the character of the island. I have to say, I think, the Nantucket Historical Commission received a whole engineering report on cobblestone bedding, on the proper construction of Cobblestone Road. It's quite far afield from how Main Street has been repaired recently. So I would not like to see cobblestone roads continue to be built in the same way that we've been building them. But what it is, it's a wonderful opportunity to do some tests, to come up with a specification that's more in line with the with standards for permeability, for stormwater management with the cobblestones. So I guess I just leave out there for the board to consider this idea of spending $225,000 returning Winter Street to cobblestones. I think there's maybe a lot of work that could be done, and I would really welcome the opportunity to have more discussion about those specifications. Thank you.
Thanks, Hillary. Comments from the board? We go on.
Yeah, I think the cobblestone, I think if it was a test, or we did a couple sections different ways, or pick somewhere else to do a couple sections different ways, I think it would be important, because some that have gone in have not lasted particularly long. And so it would be great to tackle this, and I love to see cobbles. I'm sure I've got people who don't want to see them and don't want it done, but I think it would be great to see it. Let's make sure we do it well and right.
Thank you, Matt. Hey, can we go to online hands up? Holly Backus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hi, Holly, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm not there in person to you all tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to mention first to thank Ziad and Frank for their but I also wanted to mention about the number 5 bid alternate, something obviously down the road, and would like to pursue CPC funds for the town. That's a great opportunity. Obviously, that is a funding source for preservation as well. And this would be something that as staff I would be looking into. So I just wanted to notate that, especially with that cost. I know the public obviously looks at, as well as myself, costs that are associated with projects. So thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Go to Mary Longacre.
Thank you, Jason. I have 2 questions. The first, just general comment, is I would want to make sure that any of the historic elms and other town trees along these roadways are protected, and that there are specific plans for taking care of them and not damaging them. In particular, the root zones, as well as the trees, trunks, and limbs. And then specifically in the Pleasant Street, Silver Street parking lot, the picture appears to show that the force main would cut that corner right underneath a very large tree. It's hard to see because it's a winter shot, but there is a large tree on that corner with Pleasant and Silver. And so I would really want to make sure that that tree is well protected, not just from disturbance in the soil, but also from heavy equipment being parked in the area or materials being stored. And then finally, if somebody can clarify whether or not on Lily Street at the corner with Liberty, the first project, is parking currently allowed there where the DPW vehicle is parked? So are we really losing 3 spaces, or are those already marked as a no parking zone because of that corner? Thank you.
Anybody have that parking memorized? Erica?
I actually pulled it up on the town GIS and I didn't see a yellow line, so it looks like there is parking.
There is.
I don't believe when we walked it, it was marked like a no parking here to corner unless there is an ordinance or something, not parking within 25 feet or something of the corner. But it was not marked on site.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Mary, for always defending trees and bringing that to our attention. Any other comments from the public or the board? Okay, so do we need just an endorsement, Libby, the consensus that to go for that we're go forward with this? But I think also I've heard that BPAC and Historical Commission involvement going forward. You need.
I think our team can certainly work in any comments that they have. This is really just meant to give you an overview of additional work that is being recommended to be done as part of the project and including it in the bid as alternates.
One more question. You had 1 through 5, and some of those may or may not happen. What is that? Is that process? Is that do we know that at once, or do we do 1 and 2? Those are bidded out, and then the 3rd and 4th one.
So you will know this all at once. So you will get prices for all 5.
Okay. And
then we would huddle with Rob and company, because these are engineering estimates. So a contractor could say bid number 1 might be 90,000, and the other one might come in lower. But, if there's finite funding sources for each one of those, it may affect how many you can do collectively, depending on what the prices are that you get. So but you will know the prices for all of them. And again, you have to select in the order. So by 1 through 5.
Okay, thank you. That helps, because some of these points could be new. Thoughts or comments from anyone else? Don?
I mean, not to belabor this, but I think it would be valuable if we had a little bit of a plan to do some outreach to the neighbors along Liberty and Gardner, and maybe just ask if they're willing to voluntarily give some kind of easements to improve the entire situation in that neighborhood. There may be, I think there are a few opportunities where there are rather large front yards. And there's one that I noticed today that just took out their entire hedge. So they're probably getting ready to do some work. It just, I don't know that we don't want to initiate or have the time to initiate takings, but voluntary easements might be really doable.
I agree. I see most board members shaking their head. If we could look into that, that's possible. Thank you, Don. Okay, I don't see any hands or digital hands. Thank you, Ziad. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to citizen department requests. We have the finance department request for approval of FY21 year-end budget transfers.
First, we'll do the general fund first.
We have our finance director, Mr. Turbot, here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to be back in the room with everyone. So as you're aware, last night we went to the finance committee to get their approval for the proposed year-end budget transfers. Chapter 44, section 33B allows us to do transfers between May 1st and June 15th between budget line items, provided both the finance committee and the select board concur. Do you have the other one for the general fund? Perfect. Thank you. So we'll first start with the general fund. We're proposing taking $496,000 from the general insurance line and $100,000 from police department salaries to fund the transfers that are on the right. Town administration salaries was simply that some positions that were originally anticipated to be in other departments were actually funded and coded into town administration. So we're moving money to cover those and make sure that any year-end payroll that we have enough money to cover all of those changes. Finance committee, the $6,712 is merely the cost for the increased cost for printing all of the warrants and mailing those, inserting those into the paper. IT, the $45,000 is additional licenses for various software programs that the IT department has worked very hard to roll out. Legal is $250,000. The main driver of legal is essentially labor negotiations are still ongoing, as well as two other individual cases being Surfside Crossing, which has consumed quite a bit of legal work, and SBPF. So those are what's mainly driving that request for $250,000 there. Health and Human Services, there was a $15,000, which is the difference when we added a website that to the Health and Human Services Department, and so we inadvertently neglected to fund it in the budget. So we did proceed in the beginning of the year, knowing that we would ask for this transfer to do that. Then harbor master salaries during COVID with staffing issues, the harbor master and assistant harbor masters all put in significant amount of times and overtime to get prepared for the season and to work the season. So that's the police salary transfer request of the $100,000 is to cover that difference in that budget there. So all told, it's $596,712.11, which over the last 7 years, thankfully, through the good work of the departments and my staff, has been steadily decreasing in the amount that we've needed to ask for. So we'd ask for a favorable vote. I will let you know that the Finance Committee did favorably recommend this last night.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions from the board? If no, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank
Oh,
you
sorry,
very much. Oh,
Dawn?
we have one more, Mr. Chairman.
The only thing I was going to say is the legal pains me. that you
So
can't.
we have one more from the enterprise funds. We're proposing taking $48,900 from the operating expenses at Wanacommet and transferring them into the Wanacommet salary line items. This is a result of retirement that they had and the obligation to pay out any accrued leave balances that they were entitled to. So we're asking for a favorable vote on this, and to let you know that the FinCom did favorably vote this last night as well.
Comments? Motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is that aye, Matt?
Aye.
Yes. That motion passes unanimously. Dawn, did you have a?
Oh, I was just commenting that the legal part pains me. I have concerns just generally with us having to fight things out endlessly in court rather than coming up with more community supported solutions to some of these issues. Just a comment.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, moving on, request for waiver of sewer connection permit fee for Covenant property known on Lot 3, Larrabee Lane. I'm sorry, Tucker. Yep, Tucker, can you hear us?
Jason, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So this is rather straightforward. This is the creation of another covenant lot for the Martinez family, actually our newest school board member and her husband and family. Under the sewer fee waiver policy that the board most recently revised and adopted in December of 2020, there's a provision that states the select board may, in its discretion, waive all or a portion of the sewer connection fee. It's been your practice to waive all of the connection fee on other covenant homes in recent years. And so there is a request that you do so in this case.
Thank you, Tucker.
And I would just note that Ms. Martinez is here if you have any questions for her.
Okay, thank you, Erica.
I was
Dawn?
just going to make a motion to approve the waiver.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Esmeralda, for coming.
Thank you, Tucker.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Request for approval of Celco Partnerships DBA Verizon Wireless petition for granted location for telecommunication wires and wireless attachments to be attached to existing utility poles in the public right of way. I'm going to read these off really quick. Bartlett Farm Road, 18 Bartlett Road, Dave Street, Easton Street, First Way, 262 Matticat Road, 1 Milestone Road, Old South Road, 59 Pulpus, 59 Prospect, 59 Surfside Road. We have Mike Fox and John Weaver here.
Can you hear me?
Hi there. Are you guys going to walk us through this?
Yes, we're happy to do that.
Great, thank you.
Again, as the chair indicated, my name is John Weaver. I'm outside counsel for Verizon Wireless. With me tonight is Mike Fox, the site acquisition specialist working with Verizon regarding these proposed small cell installations. I apologize that we can't be there in person tonight, but we appreciate your flexibility in allowing us to present remotely. So the proposals that are before the board tonight are essentially the same equipment that the board has approved for other wireless companies, notably AT&T and Sprint. The proposed small cell facilities are infrastructure designed to provide coverage in a much smaller, much tighter area than a traditional, much larger tower or rooftop installation. And they're used to address service issues in highly localized spots in order to free up network bandwidth more broadly through a larger geographic area. So the proposed equipment goes on utility poles, as you mentioned, and it's designed to look like other equipment that is frequently found on utility poles. Visually it should blend in with what is already there and how the poles are being used currently. The 12 proposals, 12 applications that are before you tonight are the culmination of, I think, 2+ years identifying areas of need, appropriate poles, and negotiating with the utility pole owner regarding available poles. And that last bit is an important point. So pole owners, not just in Nantucket, but across the state, will not lease space for small cells unless it's a quote unquote clean pole, meaning that there isn't other equipment like transformers, like other small cells already located there. So because of that condition that pole owners impose upon small cells, there really aren't that many poles that qualify on Nantucket, particularly in areas where they actually will improve coverage more broadly. These 12 applications represent Verizon's holistic approach to addressing Nantucket's wireless needs. We know that service, particularly in the summer, is a problem. We saw the recent Nantucket Current article where multiple people commented on that the wireless network on the island gets overlooked in the summer and service suffers. So the proposal here is not for 1 or 2, but a dozen that are intended to improve the service in key areas so that service across much more of the island improves. And so it will not only improve service for recreational use, but will also help to improve the network so that in the event of an emergency, Verizon is better able to serve those who need to contact emergency services, loved ones, et cetera. And the board has questions, we're certainly happy to take those.
Any questions? Christy?
I had a couple of questions on the size and if that was the smallest size possible. I saw that I think Matticat and Milestone had larger cell towers, and I was just wondering why those were larger.
So I'm not familiar with the installations you're talking about. So the small cells that Verizon is proposing here are the standard installation for their 4G antennas. This is what's being used in other communities in Massachusetts and are designed to sit on top of a utility pole and more or less blend into the utility pole itself.
Okay, some of them were 2 feet and some were 3, I think. So that was just, I was wondering the difference.
Oh, excuse me, I misunderstood your question. Sorry, Mike. Do you know the reason for that? There likely is an RF reason why certain antennas are chosen in certain locations. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yes, that could be correct. Verizon uses different antennas. What you could be seeing is an antenna that is no longer used. I think the 3-foot antenna is the standard, so I would have to check those out and make sure that the correct antenna is on there.
Yeah, I apologize for the confusion there. And if that's the case, we certainly can, as a condition of approval, provide updated plans that all the plans that are on record with the town reflect the antennas that will be installed.
Okay, thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I'm I had the same thought that Christie did. We want to make sure these are the, smallest profile equipment possible. And I remember when we first allowed, when these first went in, this was, Finn Murphy was on the board, and it was partly to do with not having the large big towers. This was a way to avoid the large big towers. But as time goes on, what it seems is happening to me is that now, Verizon is adding some, and someone else is going to look and add them, and we're going to end up with a bunch of, they look like refrigerators, we're going to end up with a bunch of dorm fridges on our poles. And in some areas, that's probably okay. But in other areas, I think especially if it's outside someone's window. I think Eastern Street here, there's a couple here that are fairly, most of them are okay, but there's a couple here that are pretty visible. And so I would like, so I would like to know, is this, for Verizon, is this it for you guys? And what do we face from the other carriers? And, and is there another way to do this? We probably aren't going to get there tonight. We're always told there's nothing we can do and you have to approve it. And I sort of, the tone in these letters, I don't particularly like either. It's, anyway, we have an historic town with, that we should be protecting. And the idea that the federal government and everybody has made rules that we can't protect it. It just kind of irks me a little bit. Anyway.
John, go ahead.
So I can't speak to the installations that you're describing, the refrigerators on a pole. I can say that in other communities where we've installed these, when we've gone back to, if we've installed one, we want to go back and install another one, as opposed to say that the 12 that are being put out here for a holistic solution, that they're, I don't think I remember once where somebody has complained after installation about the appearance or wondering what is that. So I think that the current model that's being used blends in maybe more successfully than the model that you're describing. But although again, I'm not familiar with the installation you're discussing, so I can't say that with certainty. But my experience certainly is that once they're installed, they largely blend into the background, well, as much as utility poles do. I know that for some people, they do in fact become just background noise, and for other people, they're much more noticeable.
John, you might be right on that, but this is also Nantucket, and we're awful sensitive to how things look. So it's definitely important for us. So if I could ask Matt's question again, is this the only option? There's no other way outside of a 50-foot tower, which we also want to avoid?
So this is the proposal that Verizon has has before it. As I mentioned, I'm outside counsel. I'm not privy to the internal strategies and RF solutions that are being developed within the company. I'm engaged for specific hearings and proposals that are being put before municipalities. So I will say that there's not a move broadly. What I see in the other engagements where I represent Verizon, there's not a move completely away from what are called macro installations, rooftop or tower installations toward small cells. They're being seen as two different types of solutions depending on the problem. So here, these are being deployed in order to relieve network bandwidth that is being provided more broadly by the 4 Verizon macro installations that are already on Nantucket in order to improve. So by addressing hotspots where there's a lot of activity, cell activity in the network, that will relieve network coverage more broadly across the island.
I think if you use Verizon for your phone, you definitely want these, and it's probably not much of a sacrifice. But if you're another customer, maybe it's not as important. Christy, go ahead.
That's kind of touching on my question is, have you kind of looked island wide at where the need is, and it's these poles that would help, or are these the only poles available and now no other carrier can come in?
Mike, you might have more information about this than I do, and I can't speak to what other carriers are doing. But this is the poles that were selected were a balance between areas that see a lot of usage and therefore poor service, combined with what poles are available in the areas that have a lot of usage. So I suspect that at least for some of these might not have been the first choice, although again, I'm not part of that selection process. But this was what was available from the utility company to address these particular locations.
Mike,
Yeah, so I can speak out on that. During the selection process, I go out with the radio frequency engineer, and John did touch on it, that it is a combination of what's available and what the radio frequency engineer from Verizon, his needs are. So it is a combination of what's available and the needs of our network.
Okay, I was going to go to public comment. If anybody have anything else, Matt?
No,
Wait.
the small fridge on this one is 37 by 15 by 10. It's a square box on the side of the things. And again, one of them every once in a while is no big deal. But if this ends up being Verizon and then, Cricket or whoever, it ends up being a bunch of different carriers on every single clean pole, we're going to look back later and say, well, geez, was there another way to do this? So
one thing that I think might make you feel a little bit better about that is that there actually are very few quote unquote clean poles on Nantucket. So the potential for these to appear on every other pole is more muted here than it would be in another community.
Thank you, John. Mr. Berta? And then we'll go to Rick Atherton, who's online.
This is a question for the engineer. You stated that these are 4G antennas. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
They're not 900 megahertz range. And are these the same as the AT&Ts with the 5 megawatt antenna, the twin antennas that are existing right now?
So I can't speak to what the AT&T installations are. These are designed.
The reason I ask is your spec sheets that were provided didn't have any information in regard to what the models were or how many antennas were on it or anything like that. It was just a generic description, but didn't actually have the components on it. And the last time we did this with the AT&T, they were running the 5 megawatt twin antennas. So sticking them outside the bedrooms, particularly one was at the hospital thrift shop right across the street from there. So, you're running 5 megawatts on a twin antenna. That's putting out some RF frequency, spreading out quite large pattern from the pole that could be basically right outside of a bedroom window. So that's what I was asking in regard. So I look forward to seeing that information when you provide it to the town.
Thank you, Thomas. Mike, do you know anything about that on those specs?
John, did you have an RF information sheet that we can provide?
Yeah, I have an RF letter that I can submit. I'm not sure if you want to see it on the screen now or if you want that to be formally submitted, but we do have something that can address this to a certain extent.
I think you can send it. We can send to the board and to the public.
Okay, thank you. And to address that, this is not a dual antenna. This is a single antenna within a cylinder on top of these poles. Again, I'm not familiar with the AT&T installation, so I can't give an educated opinion about that. The power levels associated with these antennas, these installations are quite low. And I think as you'll see from the RF letter, the drop off in terms of the emissions is quite steep once you get just a few feet away from the antenna itself.
Hey, John, well, I guess I asked the board, would you like to see it before we approve it right now versus sending it to us via email? I just kind of jumped in there, didn't ask. If you could, team, okay. Can you screen share it, John, just so we can just get a look at it before we approve it?
Yes, hold on, let me just make sure I've got the, make sure I do this correctly.
While he's looking at that, can I ask Mike a question?
Sure. Yeah.
Mike, could you answer if you know the radius that it will cover? There was concerns about it being close to windows, but I'm just wondering, how much space will one pole be able to provide coverage for those cell phones?
Typically, they say these cover anywhere from 1,500 feet. But as you see on this document here, that it does not describe the RF emissions, harmful emissions.
A rule of thumb that I've also heard is 1/8 of a mile radius around the installation. That's where the coverage will be directly felt. But again, these are addressing hotspots, so they're designed to relieve other pressures, relieve pressure from those hotspots that are burdening the overall network, freeing up space for other users in other areas. So can everybody see this?
Yes.
Yeah, can you walk us through what we're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. So the document here is, and I'll scroll, hold up, I will scroll up to the top. So this is an RF letter addressing the emissions questions and specifically MPEs, the maximum permitted emissions, maximum permissible emissions as governed by the FCC. So this is a diagram of a standard 4G installation on top of a utility pole. The blue area, well, let's start with the red and yellow areas. The red and yellow areas are the areas that we consider particularly to have particularly high concentrations. As you can see, 1,000% plus 100% to 1,000%. Those are really localized and don't exist outside of the antenna itself. When you go to the blue area, that's where it's 20% to 100% of what the FCC has deemed to be the maximum permissible emissions. Then going into green, that's 1 to 20% of what the FCC has deemed the maximal permitted emissions that are that can be exposed. For a way of comparison, if the green level was on the ground level as opposed to 30 feet up in the air for the pole, that would be deemed safe for human interaction with it, for people traveling through, people working in it. The only requirement would be that there is signage notifying people being in that area that there is an antenna there producing those emissions.
Yeah, we've had citizens a year or two ago contact who are very sensitive to this type of thing, which is, I'm not claiming I'm not claiming any of these are, next to their house, but we did have someone and, and they called me and, sort of listening to what they deal with was incredible. So I do think it is an impact in some ways, and the only ones I could see here, there's the one on Easton Street is somewhat close. It's, and there was one other that was, I think, in the Mid-Island that might be near some housing, but that was on page, what is this page number? I can't find LE. Yeah, LE2, I think it is.
It's, is this the site that's SCO Nantucket SCO4 at the top?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Dave Street. Yep, that's it.
Board members are talking about Dave Street.
Dave Street, excuse me.
Dave Street and Easton Street are the two that seem like they're fair. Those are the only two that I could tell that are close, somewhat close to, potentially to apartments or living.
I feel a little more comfortable seeing this, that it's 8 feet and it's high.
Yeah.
For the blue area.
Yeah, I mean, certainly what we found in other municipalities is that once we show this emissions chart that satisfies the FCC standard, which is what the review standard is in terms of emission standards. Now, if there are some concerns about the Davis Street and Easton Street sites, we can, again, as a condition of approval, provide revised plans that show that the distance between the two. I think you will I think you'll find that the distance is not an issue here in terms of what's considered to be acceptable from an emission standpoint under the FCC guidelines and what the chart shows here.
Okay. Thank you, John. Okay, if I go to public. Eric, if we go to Rick, Mr. Atherton.
Jason, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Just maybe two comments. One question, and I admit I am technically incoherent on all of this, but it sounds like there's a refrigerator, only one related to each pole. That's a question. The next comment is, does the town have a overall sense from the pole owner of how many and where these little boxes are on the island? And is there presumably competition among the carriers? I suspect everybody who has a cell phone wants good coverage where they are. And that creates sort of a strange kind of competition. So the town may eventually have to get into how these are allocated or talk to the owner of the poles about that subject. Thank you.
If the board's willing, I'm happy to speak to that.
Yes, please go ahead, and we'll go to Christy.
So the Mr. Atherton's question about one per pole, he's absolutely right. The antennas that are proposed tonight, it's just one antenna within the cylinder. Once a small cell, whether it's a design like this or a multi-antenna installation, is installed on a pole, that essentially forecloses that pole to future small cells. So you will not see multiple small cell installations, one from Verizon, one from AT&T, et cetera, on the same pole, because utility pole owners are not willing to lease the space that way. With regard to how the pole space is allocated, these are, for all intents and purposes, rental units, rental space that the carriers are approaching the utility pole owner for. And I'm not sure how within the utility company those decisions are made in terms of which carriers are permitted space on certain poles. There are state and federal guidelines regulating what can be charged. So it's not a question of increasing the rent or having some sort of bidding process to see which carriers are willing to pay the most for a certain space. So I suspect that it's first come, first serve to a certain extent, unless there are other guiding principles that the pole owner is using.
Thank you, John. Christy?
That touched a little bit on my question is, are there other towns that charge or lease the poles, or is there any fee that could come to the town for the use of these?
So where the town owns the utility pole, that typically is where there's a rent, basically. It's a license fee for carriers to install their equipment on the pole. The same way any other entity that wants to lease space on the pole would lease there. Here, since the poles are privately owned, the license fee is going to the pole owner.
Thank you.
We don't own any poles here. Yeah. Okay, what's the pleasure of the board? Are any more questions? Melissa?
I guess another comment. I think Rick's suggestion, and I'm not sure how we would do this or if we do it, but tracking where these are and keeping some kind of record of what we're approving and where these boxes are, so that we can in the future, as these requests come in, track their placement. And I don't know if there's a software that we currently have, like the GIS software we use for signs, for example, or something like that, that would help us track that. I'm happy to make a motion to approve these tonight, but I think it would be good for us to look into that. And that is my motion.
There's second.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay.
I just wanted to add the condition that they would look at Dave Street and Easton Street and submit revised plans if needed.
Revised plans or more details? So
More detailed
so we
plans.
understand
How close it is
Yeah.
to the buildings.
Okay. John and Mike, is that doable?
Yeah, so I think what you're looking for is the plans revised to show the distance between the antenna and the nearest residence
Yes.
at the East and the Davis Street locations, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Sure.
Do we need to do that at Bartlett as well?
Let me look at.
I can't find the picture right here. I'm looking.
So that's the SC16. It's on page 114 in our packet, LE1. It doesn't seem to be
That's
a
fine.
lot of residents near there
All right.
in this photograph.
Okay.
So I'm comfortable with the initial two.
Okay. Erica?
Can I just get clarification? Your motion was to approve, but was it also that we do this database?
No,
Okay.
that was more of just a suggestion for us to consider going forward.
Do you want a part of your motion?
No, I don't need
Okay.
that to be part of the motion. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
From experience, though, if we don't motion it, it won't happen. And so the question is, how important is it? And then the question becomes, who does it? I can see Libby giving me the, who does it look? Who does it? When do they fit it in? We're so busy. And, my experience is these things come to us, we vote and we have concerns, they go away and they come back again. And we have no choice. You have to hurry up and do it. So it's, I'm not sure where to send it that has the energy and the, sort of the time and the energy to really sort it for us, but.
It's not really an energy issue. But it is a resource issue.
Yeah.
And we are, still coming out of COVID. Let's not forget. Why don't you let us look into what it would take and we can come back to you with that.
That was going to be my suggestion, was to not make it part of this motion, but I think it's clear it's something that we're interested in and that we would like to learn more about.
Can I just
Erica?
note too that, starting with this group is fine, but we've had staff prior to us, and I don't know where those records are. I wouldn't know
Yeah.
what has been approved already and
Right.
how to catalog those.
Right.
So it would be incomplete.
Yeah.
We can take a look and see if it's even feasible. If we come back and say, well, we don't have the records, we'd have to hire somebody to do it. We can figure that out.
Or at least documenting what we do know.
Or going
and starting
forward.
with what we know.
And sometimes there's groups that are willing to do it. We had, I think it was non-voting taxpayers went and, and measured all the streets, or maybe it was, maybe it was the, what do you call it? The traffic safety might have gone and measured all the streets at one point, measured all the sidewalks. I mean, so there are, sometimes there are resources there, that we could rely upon.
Could be a WPAC project. Who
There you
knows?
go.
There we go. I like that idea.
Okay, so any more discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, members of the board. We'll get those revised plans submitted.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to a public hearing to consider amending chapter 250, harbors and town pier regulations, to be known as chapter 278, harbors and waterways.
Mr. Chair, so the board discussed this at your meeting on June 2nd and agreed to schedule this public hearing to adopt the amendments. There's a summary of the amendments in your packet. We have the harbor master and the deputy police chief here if you have any additional questions. I know that very last minute, something came in from the land bank this afternoon. And it sounds like that I would look to the harbor master or the deputy to answer what that concern was. And or answer any other questions the board may have. Otherwise, I think we didn't get any other public comment about these.
Okay. Hi, Sheila.
Hi. So the land bank, I guess the land bank council voted against. What we're gonna do is ask for permits to be put on all of the dinghies because we got complaints from the Monomoy's Homeowners Association. And we were gonna permit the dinghies that were there so that we could tell who had mooring permits there. And if they did not have a permit or a permit on the back of their dinghy, we could remove the dinghy from that area. But the land bank voted against that for the Cathcart area, which is their property. So that kind of changes the rules as far as that goes, but we were planning on doing it for all of Monomoy. We have dinghy racks in front of Mr. Gershon's house on Berkeley Avenue. And there's also dinghy racks that are by Cathcart. But as I said, the land bank voted last night to not approve that for their portion.
Don, you have a question?
Yeah, the way I took it from their comment was that they were concerned about people who just have like a dinghy or a canoe or a kayak that doesn't go with
a
big boat.
Exactly.
And that it would be kind of a burden on people who maybe don't have the means to have a big boat, but want to get on the water and want to keep something at the beach. So I'm just wondering if maybe there's an alternative to address that concern.
I agree that that's what the issue is, but that's what the homeowners association issue is.
I can just add on that. The way the regulations are drafted, it's areas determined by the harbor master to have this, enforcement mechanism in place. Because what's happening is back in the day, people would take their kayaks home with them. They bring it on their car. The bigger dinghies would stay on the beach. So it wasn't so much of a problem. Now what's happening is everyone's just leaving everything scattered on private property, which is Monomoy. So if the land bank wants to have all of these vessels, boats, kayaks, whatever they are, paddle boards, you've seen them all. Everything is left on the beach now. And that's the big problem we're trying to address, is that to keep the private property owners in basically Monomoy, who are allowing citizens to use their private property to access their moorings, to sort of keep them happy without shutting down the beach because the town isn't managing the boats that are left on the beach. If the land bank wants to assume that, that's okay, because we're not getting complaints from there. We've worded these regulations just to allow the harbor master to make that determination. So somewhere down the road, Hobart Ave becomes an issue. The harbor master can then post that area and then we'll enforce it down there. So it's very flexible to address the private property owners' needs to keep their beaches somewhat in order, and a mechanism for the harbor master to do that. If a private property owner doesn't want that mechanism in place, that's fine. And the land bank is one of those, so that's okay. Nothing has to change in the draft as we put it through.
Thank you. Dawn, go ahead.
Just a little follow-up. Might there be a mechanism in the non-land bank area for someone to obtain a permit that doesn't have a mooring permit with certain criteria?
Well, right now, no, because we're just trying to tie it to limit, basically put a cap on the amount of boats that are left on the beach. If we just left it open for everything, it would sort of defeat the purpose of what we're trying to do, at least in Monomoy, is to put a sort of cap on what can go on that beach, because it just isn't enough capacity on that beach for all of these boats. So if you have a mooring, you have a legitimate need to get to your boat, and you could take your kayak home with you. So that's sort of how we're looking at it there. But if the land bank wants to allow everyone to store their boats on their property, that's fine.
Okay. Any other thoughts? This is a public hearing, so we can hear from the public. Yep, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tom Sidlowski, Vice Chairman of the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board. I just want to point out that this issue was brought to us and we voted to approve it. So it is acceptable to us.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Elaine Russell. Stop me. Are we still on the dinghies, or was this just any general comment?
It's on this public hearing
Okay.
on. Yeah.
So I have some.
Can you pull the mic down just a little bit? Just so I can hear you from
Short,
home?
sorry.
Thank you.
All right. I'm a recreational slip holder, and just a full disclosure, my husband has a commercial slip, but he's not here. This has got nothing to do with his, but so I have some concerns about the change in the slip and the change in the slip lottery for recreational owners. Because I mean, and then also I really found that trying to read this this waterways is changing from 250 to 278. So nothing really, numbers don't line up, and it was hard to try to figure out some of this logistics, the wording in this. But basically what's going to happen is, I mean, if they make all these slips, they're going to make them 2 years revocable, but then you can renew it without having to go to the lottery. So what happens is, my question is, somebody said, well, they're going to keep it as the people that already have slips, or is there going to be a new lottery in October? I have a question about that for the recreational. And then there's two parts in this. One part, it says that if a slip, basically somebody's going to have a slip, they're going to have it for 2 years, they can automatically renew it. So basically they get it forever. So, unless they decide to get rid of their boat or they get, don't meet the criteria. And then, so that shuts out a whole group of people for future use. So, these 50 or 60 people, whoever, whatever the number is, they may get an opportunity to get a slip, but then that shuts out the rest of the people that are on the list every year. I mean, and that's a concern of mine. Also, another concern is it says initially it's going to be the drawing, and then in one area of this regulation, new regulation, it says if somebody decides not to pay for their slip in April, it's going to go to the next person on the wait list. But then another section of this says if there's an available slip, it's going to go back into the lottery every year. So I don't understand. That's my question about that. Also, again, even on the commercial slips, I know really right now I go to the slip drawing every year, and there's usually about 12 commercial. There's 6 permanent commercial slips, and there's 6 one-year ones, and they want to make all those permanent. And right now, I believe there's really only about 12 commercial people, so that's not going to have a huge impact on that. And that's just my personal comment, nothing to do with my husband. But what's going to happen with all these recreational people? So that's, I guess, those are some of the questions I have.
I have a question for you and town staff is what you're bringing up. Are these changes in the amending what's happening right now that in the changing 278? Are these things that have always been there that are problematic?
No, these are new. These are new proposed changes. I mean, and to me,
Okay.
I mean, I've been a recreational. I've had my own boat down at the town pier, fortunately, for many years now, and I come and I pay my $25 now for the lottery every year. Unfortunately, I get a slip, or and some slips are 2 years. And I mean, to me, it's a system that works. So why are we changing it? I don't understand. I mean, I understand the dinghies. I understand the Airbnb piece for the, for boats out there in the mooring field, and when they changed the commercial slips, maybe 8-10 years ago, there was a need for that. The commercial people went to the harbor master and said, can we do something to help us? How can we run a business if we don't know when we have a slip? But I just look at the recreational piece is different.
Okay. We'll get some answers from Deputy Chief here. Thank you.
Just as a little history, the lottery was required because of Chapter 30B. When 30B first went into effect, they required everything to be any municipal service or that was procured or sold had to go to lottery or bids or even sealed bids. So what happened over the years, the laws changed. The slips came out of that. The slip lottery came out of that fairly soon. Same thing. We used to have to take bids for tow services every year. So 30B has evolved from that original enactment. I think Nantucket is the only one left doing a lottery in the state. Everyone had to do it at first, but over the years, everyone's gotten rid of the lottery. And as Ms. Russell had said, for the same reason that she used as an example is one of the reasons why we'd like to remove the lottery is that people who have a slip, they have a boat, they don't know next year that they're going to be on that slip. So what happens is they keep their moorings and they pay for their moorings and have their moorings serviced every year because they don't know the next year if they're going to have a slip. So if they know they're going to have a boat slip, then they'll be able to get rid of that mooring because why keep it? And that would free up more moorings for the general public who are on the mooring wait list. And as the mechanics of the lottery, as Ms. Russell had said, we used to have them all as a lottery. The Class A, which is the full-time charter boats, the fishing boats that are on the floating dock. We changed those so they knew that they would be from year to year, they could have a guaranteed spot. Half of those, the B commercials, those are still in a lottery. And then the residentials are every year. Every year, someone comes in and they don't have a slip the next year. You know, they lose. And we see people come in for the same family, the cousins, the nephews, they all put in, pay for the lottery for the one spot. So you could have 5, 6 people going into the lottery for one spot. And it's become sort of unwieldy about how to make it fair. So if you have a large family and you can put in 6 or 7 lottery applications, you've improved your odds versus the person who just thinks, oh, I'll just put one in and I have an even chance at it. So what we were proposing is everyone who's on there now, they get to stay. We have one lottery which establishes the wait list. So then as the slip holders come up, the next person on the wait list goes, just like we do for the mooring. We have a mooring wait list so that when a mooring comes up that goes on the wait list, we give them that mooring. We want to do the same thing as we do with the slips.
Yeah, how long is the mooring wait list right now?
About 5 years.
Okay.
But it's also for different.
Free up a bunch more.
It's also for different areas too. This is like Children's Beach is really the peak. But if you wanted to go to Warren's Landing or some other place that was more open, you could get a mooring right now. Just couldn't be in town.
Yeah, any other questions for Deputy Chief or?
I just heard something that is a bit concerning. When they came to us at the harbor at Shab, we discussed this at quite a long time. And what we asked them was whether they were going to run the lottery this year for all spaces, because we didn't want to change the provision where now you get an automatic renewal for people who didn't know that was going to be possible. And we were assured that there would be a lottery this year for all the spaces. And the second thing was we pushed hard to have not all spaces be permanent, but that there always would be a lottery for the space, for some of the spaces. So we pushed them and asked them to have a certain number of spaces always lotteried every year. And we would like to see that. We don't want to have existing people be grandfathered in this year. We think everybody should go in the lottery and then move ahead as the provisions say and the regulations.
Go ahead, Sheila.
We did discuss it at Shab. We did discuss it with Shab, and I brought their recommendations back but the decision was made to go forward with the proposal as we had written it. We did discuss the fact that they wanted to see a full lottery for this year. And we did discuss that they wanted to see a compromise of having the recreation. There's 2 sets of boats on there. There's recreational A, that's 2 years, recreational B, that's 1 year. And they asked that the recreational B continue to be every single year. But they did ask about having the one lottery, but we went forward with the recommendation as is.
Thank you.
Can I
Melissa?
just, yeah, because I actually wrote here, it would be nice to start fresh with the lottery. So what's the reasoning to leave the current slip holders current and not start this new policy fresh with a new lottery?
That's just the way we proposed it.
Okay, I'm just curious because you said you brought it back and discussed it and decided to stick with this plan. So what was the rationale to stick with this plan?
Well, as I already said, that's the mechanics of the lottery. We really would have to come up with some real stern application requirement.
One family, one application.
Well, then even one family, because who's the family? And this is the
right.
problem of the mechanics of it. A lottery sounds great until you have 6 people putting in one app, basically trying to get one spot versus the one individual who has, he's already outnumbered just because he doesn't have a large family.
Yeah.
If the board wanted us to have one lottery clean, that's fine too. We're just trying to make it streamline the process because this lottery is really becoming cumbersome because of, as I said, it's, people are putting their kids in there as, applications because all they have to do is put $25 in and they get, trying to guarantee that spot.
Yeah.
So and as Shab said, they have these recommendations to keep half of the lottery or portion of it. It's either all or nothing. We either keep going the way we're going or we don't change it. I said Nantucket is an outlier for lotteries for slips because, as I said, if you have a recreational boat, you'd like some, sort of, knowledge of where you're going to be next year.
Some dependability.
Yeah, I mean,
see
whether you
that.
need a boat trailer or you're going to need a mooring, or there's a lot that goes into not knowing where you're going to be from year to year.
Yeah.
And that's what we're just trying to avoid.
I see that long term. I just think for this, with this such a sweeping policy change, I would prefer to see year one start with a new lottery.
Matt?
Yeah,
And then
just,
Dawn?
yeah. My concern is that this will get, we will have no turnover. Once we implement this, these spaces will go for 10, 15 years. If we're worried about, sort of multiple names, we could do it by, the registered boat name or something else. Like it doesn't have to be a whole family puts a thing, and you could limit it that way. And a lot of this is a result, and this is me, everyone's gonna look at me sideways again, but this is a result of the growth that we've faced over the last 20, 30 years. Things that were okay prior, the docks were big enough. We had enough space in the harbor. We weren't, things were okay at the, 330 homes in the last 2 years. They're not okay. And so, and I'm worried about locking it up. So once people get it, no one else ever has a chance.
I share that concern.
Yeah. So but I don't know what to do. I'm just, I think we've got to really think it through.
Dawn?
I really do see the benefits of potentially freeing up moorings because that's a big issue. But I also, I kind of liked Shab's suggestion of half and half, which I know still means running the lottery. I mean, I know that the multiple names being able to be put in has generated more revenue, but I feel like it used to be that it was attached to the boat. Whatever boat registration you had, you can put in one entry and not regardless of how many owners there are. So, I mean, I'm just kind of thinking out loud is what if you split it where some of the slips try this new way to potentially free up moorings, because people certainly they're going to hold on to both, and they might still hold on to both. But the in terms of if there is a lottery being run, I think it gets tied to the boat registration and not to anybody's name.
So for year one, Dawn, you'd be comfortable seeing a lottery for A or B or a half?
Yeah, I'm thinking why not just go right to like half and half.
Okay. Christy?
I was just gonna ask, is there anything, like once somebody has the slip, it's kind of forever, if they pass away, does it get passed on in family? Is there anything that kind of puts it back into the lottery or any provisions?
Well, our intention was to run it like the other communities that don't use the lottery system. They have a wait list. And if somebody gives up the slip, we go to the next person on the wait list. We already have a wait list going because people that didn't win a slip at the last lottery, we have their names and everything in order of when they asked us to go onto the wait list by date and everything else. And that's pretty much the way like Harwich, Barnstable, all the Cape towns do it, that have several marinas, and they all do it by a wait list. And once somebody gives up the slip, we just go to the next person on the wait list.
And is there anything to prevent somebody from selling that slip?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sheila.
Yeah. Brooke?
Hi, Brooke Moore. At the very least, if someone gets a slip that they can renew forever, they should be required to give up their mooring.
That was the plan, to open it up to more people. So they would give up their mooring, and, the question had come up, what about storms? What about stuff like that? They're gonna have to trailer, go to the boat basin or do something like that. But we would require, if they did keep them, they would have to give up their mooring.
So that's in there. That's required if
That
we were to
would have
go.
that would have been a requirement, and that was our thought. It would open up boating to more people.
Okay. Mr. Berta?
Couple questions. If you're on the, if you get a pier slip, do you also have the mooring slip for that season? Or is that mooring slip, or if you have a slip on the town pier, do you still have access to your mooring that you have?
Currently.
Tom, can you talk
Sorry.
for me just
All right,
so
sorry.
the mic can pick it
Sorry, I
up?
apologize.
Yeah.
So if you currently have a slip on the lottery, then that means you also have a mooring too. So if you get a slip, then you should be removed off of the mooring, but it shouldn't be something permanently rolled over forever because it'll never roll over. Maybe a 30% lottery, 60% lottery, or something like that should be fair, because there should be turnover. There should be ability of some people to be able to get on a dock, and then next year they may not. I mean, and not only that, but question was, I have a question. Was this advertised at all? Because I think there would have been a lot of boat owners here knowing.
Yeah, public hearing.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Could you bring in Rick Atherton? I don't know if his hand was up if I missed him from before, or if this is on this agenda item. Oh. Just go away. Okay. I think maybe he just pulled off. Okay, Deputy Chief?
If I could suggest, there seems to be, I get a consensus from the board of, I think, where you want to go. Maybe continue the hearing for a month. We can put together some revisions. And then get back and we can talk about it in a month, because we have, these are designed to go in effect for next voting season. That's why we're doing it now.
Yeah.
So give us a chance to put your thoughts in. We'll do a 50% lottery. That seems to be what I'm hearing. And address your concerns and bring it back up, because I think we know where we're going with it. So we can, if you want to continue it for a month, that'd be great.
Okay. Don?
Motion to move it to the August 18th meeting. Continue
Second.
the public hearing.
I did.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Don. Did you want to, we'll go and take more comment.
Yeah, hi, my name's Steve Lineback and I live in Monomoy. It seems to me that the changes in these waterway rules are three separate and distinct different issues. And is it possible to separate them out and, treat them separately rather than one bulk? Because, the Airbnb, no one's having a problem with. The dinghies, no one's having a problem with. The town pier is. So rather than make it one lump omnibus kind of vote, can't we just separate them out?
I'm not sure for it with the public hearing, it's all together, but it sounds like you said, those first two issues we're fine with. If we can figure out, come back in a month, we might be okay to come to some compromise.
Okay.
Pass them all forward.
That's just a suggestion, since there are three sort of distinct separate issues
Yeah.
concerning the harbors and waterways.
It might have to be 3 different public hearings if we were to really separate it up like that, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Libby.
I was just gonna say, I understand the concept being brought forward, but it is sort of technically more difficult to do it that way.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
I just asked when they come back with these regs that either they use it all from, they change 250, even knowing at some point it's going to go to 278, or the full regulations are put out in this new chapter 278, because, I don't know, I'm just getting mixed signals. One place says it's going to be a slip drawing, for an empty slip, and the other one says it's going to be by wait list. So, and how is the wait list going to be determined? I just think there's got to be clear there. Also, how long is the wait list going to be if they make a bunch of slips permanent? I mean, right now it's only 20 people. Is it going to be like the mooring list? It's going to be 100. I also do know, when I went to Barnstable's website to look up the fact, granted, I do know that other communities do have permanent slips, and the wait list in Barnstable is 28 years to get a slip. So that just, and I just don't see why we have to be like every other community either.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Erica, you had something you wanted to add? Okay. So by bringing this back, are we talking August 18th?
That was the date.
So it is? Okay. Thank you.
I just want to add a thank you to Sheila and Charlie for their hard work on this. And I really appreciate the challenges in the process. And I also appreciate, I remember how excited my mom would be when she won the lottery to put her boat on the slip. So it might be an emotional attachment to the lottery. And I don't put my name in because I do feel like the odds are stacked against me. So, but I would love to have my boat on a slip at some point if I could. So in any case, I think there's still a segment of Nantucket who loves the idea of being able to have the opportunity to use a slip for a summer or two, even if you can't have it forever. But thank you for your hard work on this.
Thank you. I would echo that. I think we're trying to make it more equitable, and each way isn't fair in different ways. Yeah. Thank you.
At 28 years in Barnstable is frightening.
Yeah, that's great.
Is that where we're heading?
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
Okay. Town managers report.
Thank you. I don't have a specific item on the agenda, but I wanted to review with you some upcoming items on your meetings. Next Wednesday, you have an HDC appeal, and you have an e-permitting update, proposed adoption of the housing production plan, a discussion regarding outdoor dining, and some real estate items from June. You have no meeting on Wednesday, July 28th. On Wednesday, August 4th, right now, subject to change, you have probably some traffic safety work group recommendations, a presentation from the Natural Resources Department on 2020 water quality testing, and end of year budget reviews for some enterprise funds for fiscal 2021. And there are a couple of other items pending. On August 10th, Tuesday, August 10th, you will have a workshop meeting regarding events, large events. You've talked about this a little bit before, and we're working on a structure for that workshop. No meeting Wednesday, August 11th. Wednesday, August 18th. Going to add the
What
continuation of the
time is
hearing.
that
You just
August 10th meeting?
9:30.
9 a.m. Wednesday, August 18th, more end of year budget reviews for fiscal 21. They are tentatively the potential conclusion of the Arcadis Baxter Road project and a couple of other items pending. On Thursday, August 19th, from 1 to 4, you have a facilities master plan workshop scheduled.
You said at what, 4 to 6?
1 to 4.
Oh, 1 to 4. Sorry.
Yeah, and Erica, I don't think we've gotten outlooks out about these things. So I'll work with you to get that done tomorrow. Facilities, I think we didn't finish that off totally, but I think I heard back from most of you on it.
Yeah, it'd have been like a moving target for a little bit.
Mhm. And then the 25th and September 1st, no select board meetings, correct?
Thank you. Correct. Yes.
Right. The August 25th, September 1st, no select board meetings.
No, 11th.
Correct. Yep. No 11th.
That's it.
Okay. All right. On to select board reports and comments. 2021-22 select board committee liaison work group representative appointments. Let's make some deals.
Can I just note that I got a couple of emails and texts today,
Mhm.
so I have updated the sheet again. So I'm going to put it on the screen. 1 second.
Yes, I added on Capcom.
So you have 2 rep positions that no one has signed up for, the advisory committee for Neighborhood First and the cannabis advisory committee. And then you have 2 people vying for the NPEDC space.
I'll do the neighborhood first.
And NPDC, is that going on the county meeting
That's
next
actually
week?
counting for next week.
So we don't need to battle that out tonight.
Yeah, well, either way, if you want to do it, you can do it. That's
Yeah.
fine with me.
I'd like to do one more year. COVID kind of ruined my 1 year on it.
But as long as you push for the, the master plan and make sure that we're getting public participation and, get that thing underway, especially with with everything we're facing right now.
Mhm. And we've also just commissioned a carrying capacity study.
Sounds like a deal.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
I do
Melissa?
a question about the Cannabis Advisory Committee and its purpose, staying as a standing committee. It seems like it would be something to bring back if we were going to be in a place where we were entertaining expanding licenses, but I'm not sure that there's a purpose behind this committee anymore.
So it's not a standing committee currently. It
Okay.
has been extended only through 2022.
Okay.
And then you were gonna revisit it and see if you wanted to make it a standing committee, similar to crack.
Gotcha. Okay.
We did bring this up in our agenda meeting today, and I asked the same question.
Okay.
And we kind of came to the conclusion of if we're going to meet up again, let's have the committee come back and say, you know what, we're good. We can end this early.
Yeah.
Or-
I'm happy to serve on it.
Okay.
They have a meeting scheduled, so.
Okay.
We wanted that coming from the committee that they were done before
Sure.
22nd.
Sure.
But I had the same question. Like, what are we looking at now?
Yeah.
All right, so
Sounds like we're
Melissa
done then.
for cannabis, Christie for neighborhood first. And it sounds like Matt has given over for NPDC, but we'll do that or ratify it next week.
Yeah, that's fine.
We do have an NPDC meeting this Monday upcoming.
I mean. Okay. You were just not in county yet, and county technically has to be the appointing person.
So would the
just-
standing member just stay until
Yeah,
we
you
do
would
that
stay.
vote?
So
Yeah.
you would
Yeah.
stay,
Yeah.
and then.
Until we reappoint you.
Perfect. Sounds like a good plan. Who's the neighborhood first person? Christie?
What's that?
Neighborhood first, that's Christie.
Is there any other questions? I asked today is the Pulpus Harbor Municipal Advisory. Is that still, you guys still meet, Matt?
I was no one ever.
Maybe not during COVID, but.
No,
It hasn't been active in a couple of years.
Yeah. I didn't.
So,
In the Bohm Energy, we didn't meet. We were dealing with other issues, but not necessarily through that group.
That's going to come and go, right?
and I reached out to Lauren about that, and she recommended that we keep a rep there or two reps there just in case things come up.
Okay.
Yeah, but there has been stuff with her through, through the consultants, the lawyers and, the wind stuff. So there's been action pretty
I
much all
figured
year.
more might be coming down the pike with that.
Okay, anything else on this you need from us, Erica, Libby, board members? Okay. Any committee reports? Done.
Just one, the CPC has their big annual meeting this Tuesday at 10 a.m. in this room. It's when some presentations are made of recipients, and it's really nice.
What is it?
The Community Preservation Committee is
Tuesday at
10 a.m.
9:30.
on Tuesday.
It's at 9:30.
Oh, is it 9:30? I think that's for regular business beforehand, but maybe not.
I think the.
Okay,
The meeting.
I
starts at
stand
9:30.
corrected. It starts at 9:30.
Christie?
I don't have a committee report. I just wanted to thank town staff for putting together the hybrid model. I know we had a couple hiccups, but I think it went really well tonight. It was nice to see people in the audience attending and still having participation online.
Yeah. We will ask NCTV 18 on that, but yeah, we noticed that too. Yeah. I was going to ask that question. How did everybody feel that this went? Was there any, I just kind of decided to go with everybody in the room first and then go to online. We could switch that. We could, yeah. Christie?
Oh, I didn't mind the process. I'm just wondering, could we make it more of an option to participate remotely? Like Esmeralda came and sat here for 2 hours to be approved pretty quickly. So giving it an option to people on the agenda that they could participate remotely.
She was.
Okay,
She was given that option.
perfect. And when we do a committee appointments, I know when people come and talk, maybe that they could have that option to be remote as well in a couple weeks.
Yeah. I'm fine with that. I mean, I think it's going to increase participation.
Yeah, I think it went really well. I'd be curious because we're here in this isolated little bubble and it looks like it went well, but I'd love some feedback from the community, you know, who are watching on Zoom and trying to participate, how that went. But I think it's a resounding success.
Yeah, I got some texts during the meeting about Matt's mic not working, and I had a screen share issue. Apparently I grabbed the wrong one, and so it wasn't projecting what was on the screen, but I fixed it.
Yeah, you did. And there was there is something interesting that I noticed happen where like you would pick the right one and then it would shift. And so I don't know what that was about, but that could just be one of those odd Zoom errors, not
idea.
not user. So yeah, but I mean, really well done. I think this is a great step forward for public participation.
Yeah, I really appreciate being back in this room and having people here. I hope people who can will come because it's really nice to have this atmosphere back. But I've, been hearing from so many people, particularly people who who are not here the full year, how amazing it's been for them to be able to participate. And I think that this hybrid is going to be really successful.
Big thank you to NCTVA team because they've problem solved a lot in the last 2 weeks. Even from Monday when we did the trial run, they've continued to problem solve. So big shout out to them.
I think the biggest challenge was talking to the consultants. I realized I was looking at my computer, and to them, it's just like looking at top of my head or something when the camera goes in.
Yeah.
So trying to figure out where to look when we're trying to talk to the consultants.
Yeah. And there was once where I was trying to say something before they went on. They didn't hear me, and we were talking over each other. And so we'll get that figured out. Any other suggestions?
Anyone else feel like Rick was like a voice from above? That's what I felt like.
That's funny. Anything else?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Who seconded that? Christy? Christy seconded.
All the slips that are left over